Faces. You say go, and I'll call the meeting to order.
Yep, we are live.
Okay. Okay, the regular meeting of the Ojai City Council is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
She's walking back to her office, so I'll call it. Councilmember Wyrick?
Here.
Councilmember Francina?
Here.
Councilmember Blatz?
Here.
Councilmember Haney?
Here.
And Mayor Johnson.
Here. Okay. The pledge. James, will you from Control Central lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Ready, begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
justice for all. Okay. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Okay, the approval of the agenda. I have had a request for a continuance on the item for the ATP. Is that request still live?
Yes, yes, it is. To a special meeting, just involving that item.
Okay, so a postponement.
I have a question.
Yes.
I thought we were going to at least go to the item, and I wanted to know why we're postponing it. And I don't mind postponing it. I just want clarity on why.
We'll have a motion and a discussion on it if that's okay.
When we get to it. Okay.
Bill, you want
to take that up when we get to item 6, then you'll entertain a motion to continue at that time?
Well, I was just wondering if whether or not, I just want to give everybody a heads up if we are intending to do, and it sounds like enough of us have questions. There's no reason to do that twice, to let the audience at home who may be waiting for the item to come up, to let them know we're not going to do it. So is there a city attorney, can we go ahead and in the approval of the agenda and have that postponement?
Yeah, if there's a majority consent, then yeah, the item 6 can be postponed up front.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Just a second, Susan. Let me just set the table here. Okay, we have a motion and a second to postpone the item on the ATP, and now we'll have some discussion. So, okay, Susan, you have a question.
Okay, so by doing this now, does that preclude what happens with the public comments? And will those that requested the postponement explain to the public why they're postponing it?
Okay, we already have the comments, I think, by email. Is that correct, City Manager?
Yes.
Okay, so we have that information. So now Bill's got his hand up. Bill, you want to explain why the request for a continuance?
Yes, the precise thing that Randy and I were proposing, I guess, Randy, you're still on board with this?
Yeah.
Is to continue to a time certain, maybe even next week if we could, in the Tuesday time slot. And the reason is there's going to be a lot of numbers, discussion, extensive graphics tables, and rather than try to do that late in the evening, when we're all also dealing with budget issues and other matters, that we set up a session just for a full deliberation on this topic and this topic alone in the special meeting. That's the idea.
Okay, and wasn't there some concern with the posting of this, that it didn't quite get posted in a way that it was accessible until just very recently, James?
I think we had a couple of people say they couldn't access the large file, the 60% design. And so that would give them time to review that. It's a pretty large file, so it definitely takes some time to review.
Okay, so those are the two things that I heard, Susan. The one, in order to give adequate time to really dig into this, because it is complex, and two, some citizens felt that we didn't give adequate notice.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. So can we at this point decide the date certain for next Tuesday so that the audience knows that it's going to be on, that we're going to have a special meeting? Is that the direction?
Okay, well, would the maker of the motion put a time certain?
Yes, I'd like, with the advice of the city manager, if that's feasible to, in the same time slot next Tuesday, be the schedule, I welcome that amendment.
Okay, so that's part of the motion, and it would be next Tuesday then, what, at 7 o'clock or the 7
And
o'clock?
Barry, I'd like to, can we start it at 6 versus 7?
Why do we want to start?
Because it's going to be a long discussion.
Well, it shouldn't be. If it's the only topic, it shouldn't be more than 3 hours, 7 to 10. Well, if there's something wrong, if it is.
I'd rather be 6 to 9, but that's okay. I'm just saying.
Oh, well, okay. If we'd all agree that it would be 6 to 9, I'm for that.
I'm okay with
that's
it.
what I'm trying to say is,
I'm
if
okay
it goes
with
a
it.
little over, it goes a little over, but it just gives us a little more latitude. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I think that we ought to put a time limit on it because this has been going on for 3.5 years that I've been on the council and before I got here. So,
Next Tuesday makes sense, James?
Yes.
Okay.
And I will note the request for 6 to 9 p.m.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I think by changing it to a different time, we have to make more effort to let the public know of the time change.
Yeah,
I don't mind the time change personally, but I just want to make sure that the public knows.
Okay, we'll post it on Facebook and a couple extra places.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So any further question or discussion?
Okay, is this the time?
Okay. If not, is there any objection to what, Susan?
Oh, never mind. I thought you were going to the next item.
No. Is there? Do I hear any objection to the amending the agenda to postpone to a time certain next Tuesday at 6 o'clock?
No.
Not hearing any, so ordered. Okay. Now for the rest of the agenda, are there any other changes?
Would you like a motion to approve?
Susan has a question.
Yeah.
Oh, are we moving on, or do we need a motion to approve?
Did you want to pull anything, Susan?
Yes, I want to pull E, I, and M.
Okay. Well, let's see. We can do that though under the consent calendar. Are we in agreement now on the agenda itself?
Yeah.
With that one postponement. Okay.
And I'll second Mandy's motion to approve.
Okay. So if no objection, the agenda stands approved as amended. And we now go to the consent calendar and we have a request to remove, Susan, did you say E and what else?
I and M.
E, I, and M. Okay.
So, Mayor, I move to approve the consent calendar other than E, I, and M.
Second.
Okay. We moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, let's take, I guess we go to E. Susan?
Okay. James, do you remember that last year we discussed the investment policy?
Yeah.
And I remember getting a little note from our former finance director, Rudy, that we had written something, but I couldn't find the piece of paper. So I just wanted to assure that the concerns of the climate emergency member Michelle Leahy, Michelle Ellison, were addressed. She wrote, please include divestment from fossil fuel companies and the banks that fund them. The UC system just fully divested. And she sent us an article how the University of California has fully divested from fossil fuels. And so I just want to know if that's part of our policy, or if we can still, if we didn't add it formally last year, should we add that in?
Yeah, so it's unfortunately not part of the policy. I think I saw that email, so we were reviewing it earlier, and yeah, for whatever reason, as you mentioned last year, it came up, but it didn't get added in. So I talked to the finance director, and we talked about. I think a good process to move forward would be, the investment policy is created by the finance director and the city treasurer. So I asked the finance director to reach out to city treasurer Raines and then come back with a recommendation. So, I would, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Randy.
No, Mayor, can we have an assessment of just how much money we have invested in these? And is there a cause and effect to it? That's all.
I think we mostly have CDs, don't we?
Yeah, we mostly have CDs at this point. And
And plus, we're getting fewer CDs because of the pandemic. So this may not have any real impact, at least on the industry that we'd be investing in. But I think we're going to have a budget and finance committee where the treasurer will be there.
And that's what we were thinking too, is we could talk about it with the treasurer at that meeting.
Okay, and then report back to council on any policy change. Is that okay, Randy?
Yeah, I'm not in disagreement with what what Souza and Michelle was talking about. I think it behooves us to know how much and what are the impacts of what we're investing in.
Okay, so we'll get a report back.
Great.
Okay, now Susie, was it I?
L?
Oh, L.
Okay.
Oh, pardon me.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
I thought it was I.
I thought whether I was in there.
Yeah, so did I.
let's see, maybe I missed one.
Oh, you meant L. It looks like an I.
Okay, I called L I, sorry.
Well, then I move approval of I.
Second.
Okay, moved and second to approve I. Any objection?
Wait a minute. Is that the micro enterprise home kitchen operation?
No, I is the library special tax.
Library tax.
You mislabeled. So we're just going back and approving I and that L, and we'll take L up again.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Okay.
I have so much.
Everybody good with that?
Yes.
Okay. I don't hear any objection to the approval of I, so ordered. And now let's go to L, which we had approved, but we're going to pull back on that a little because of the misunderstanding. Okay. Susan.
All right. So, James, what is your thought process for not recommending this? Because when I took a close look at it, it seems like it could be a good thing for Ojai.
Yeah, and this is one. We tried to rewrite the report to state clearly that what we're opposed to is not the concept of micro enterprise home kitchens, which for people watching who maybe aren't familiar is a new concept where a residence can be used to provide 30 meals per day or 60 meals per week, and somebody can come eat those meals at the residence or pick them up or take them to go. So we're not opposed from a staff perspective. We don't have concerns with that concept so much. We have concerns with the current legislation, which basically says that the city has two choices: to allow them or not to allow them. And if they're allowed, we have no regulatory ability on them. So we can't require that they have adequate parking. We can't require that they follow any specific requirements. So from our recommendation is that we provide a letter to the county that, although we'd be open to MECOs, with city regulation, we do not support it as they're currently proposed.
Because the proposal is to preempt local regulation or local control, which is something in our platform that we generally are not. Where is the League of Cities on this? I'll get you.
So I speak to that one. Okay. The League of Cities opposed the bills that created the MECO statute. Unfortunately, they passed. And what the statutes did is they gave the county public health officials and county environmental health officials the power to decide our zoning. The state statutes create the structure where if the county approves MECOs, that approval applies across the entire county, including the unincorporated cities. The league opposed that, but it nonetheless passed. And the league has been working with counties to identify opportunities that exist for the county to narrow the impact of that opt-out decision. And that's, I think, the heart of the proposed letter, is to ask Ventura County to use what little discretion remains in the statute to create some local opportunity for regulation. And the question is whether they will do so or not.
Okay. Bill?
I just want to point out, Susan, one of my biggest concerns, because when I first heard about the concept, I'm absolutely wonderful. All right. But then when you look at the slide, which says MECO summary, and this is one of my core problems, can be operated from single or multifamily homes owned or rented. So if you think about what might happen in an apartment building where people are running a business all of a sudden that might have impact on their neighbors, in a way that would take away, without us having any ability to regulate. It almost sort of sets up a situation where the concept is undermined by the fact that there's no real regulatory guidance that can be provided locally that makes it work for our community. So my objection, to echo the mayor, is that the one size fits all mentality that might come out of Ventura County, and I would hope that they would allow or find a way to allow each of us to implement this concept in a way that makes sense for our community.
I understand what you just said. Those are my hesitations as well. But on the other side, you're talking about 60 meals a week. So the most they could do is twice a week, 30 meals. That's the most they could do.
Yes.
They can't do more than 30 meals a day.
Right. And how do you regulate that?
Well,
how do you audit that?
Seems like that's something that you would do if you were having a party at your house,
Okay. So do they pay for the extra trash disposal when if they're a renter in a small apartment unit?
Okay, I get your draft. Okay, so could we give direction to staff to make clear that we're not opposed to the concept, but these are our concerns? So that it isn't so. It sounds like that we're not opposing the authorization, like state that a little more diplomatically.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Well, I must
I like the concept. It's a twix between cup and lip. You got to have a design right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
But to me, the question, and maybe it's too late to have this discussion, that the state's basically preempted and then punted to the county, and then the county is going to either say yes or no. But when you think about it, it exempts them from fire codes. It exempts them from, I guess, ADA. It exempts them, in effect, the people who run these little restaurants. They say it's going to be an entrepreneurial opportunity to go into business. But we have people that are struggling in business. And if people are going to start doing this with no overhead and no oversight, one of the biggest hazards of a restaurant are grease fires. Mm-hmm. And if you have somebody cooking, not that they would intend to burn the apartment house down or even their own home down, but it's a possibility. So it doesn't seem to me that we want to be supportive of it at this stage. Randy?
Yeah, I agree with that. I just look at it as health and safety. I don't understand why we would want every citizen in Ojai to be able to open a restaurant. And would you want a restaurant next door to you? Again, this kind of reminds me of the old SDR debate. Not in my neighborhood and not my next door neighbor, and not. And so I don't understand why this community would want that. And if they do, maybe we need to actually take it to the community and say, do you all want it? Because I don't think we would.
Well, we need to take it to the county so that they don't impose it on us is the problem. And so that's, I think, what the letter is supposed to do. And then we can sit down and talk to anybody who's advocating for it. Maybe they can do it in a sensible way. But when you think of what it takes just to, even with a leaf blower, as loud as it is, and you can smell the gasoline, how hard that code is to enforce, if we don't have any right to do anything in every residential neighborhood, you could have this going on. And I'm just wondering what is the benefit versus what is the risk, and I'm not sold on it. So okay.
Is there a limit to a number even that you can have?
I don't believe so.
No, the legislation does not provide for a limit.
Okay, all right, I can move on. Thank you.
Okay, just right approve the letter.
Well, I approve, with the understanding of what I stated, that we're in support of the concept with local regulations, something like that.
Well, I'm not in support of the concept yet. I have to know more why we would be doing it. Do we have a motion of some sort? Okay, I move we approve it as written, but
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
I don't want to. No.
Okay, you don't want to have your name on something that's saying that you don't like the concept, right?
Yeah.
But we haven't. Have we said we don't like the concept, or are we just silent on that and saying that we don't like what's been written? I think is what James.
Yeah. So the way we wrote it was, we wrote as proposed as currently, or opposed as it is currently written. So I think, you know, you could read that as saying it supports the concept or it doesn't, but it, you know, I think that actually is in line with what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's a compromise. We're neither endorsing or opposing it. We're just saying that it is in its present form. It doesn't look like something that we can manage very well.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I just feel like there is a place for it. I don't think everybody's going to do it. You're talking about somebody maybe making who knows how to make tamales, for example.
That'd be great. And I bet they're doing it right now, and I think that's wonderful. We don't need to institutionalize it.
All right.
Okay. Is there any objection to the motion? If not, okay. So ordered. You got it, James. Okay. Let's,
No, she wants him.
Okay. I'm the liaison to Ventura County Animal Reg, as you all know. I'm looking at, James, I'm looking at that 53,000 for additional costs for minimal service.
Mm-hmm.
What about that? And then, you know, and what I mean, I'm going to vote in favor of this because, as I understand it, the city can break the contract anytime, correct?
Yes.
That's what it says at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I keep wondering about, because we've got the Ventura County, I'm sure this has been discussed with previous councils. We have the Ventura County Humane Society is based in Ojai, and I sometimes wonder what they could do since they're here, if we ever got to have the time to discuss that with them. So as long as it's clear that we can break the contract, as long as that's correct, and I don't know about this additional cost at this point in time. I'm not happy about that. If there's anything you can do about that, I don't know.
well, vote against it.
And I have a question, Mayor.
Yes, Bill.
James, are we in any way endorsing any of the positions of the county here? And I'm referring to the 1, 2, 3, 4th bullet on page 1-122, where it states that the animal care services budget will increase by 5% per year each year. In other words, they're laying out much higher than the cost of living increase for the animal services budget for each of the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. Are we endorsing that in any way, shape, or form, or concurring with it?
Agreeing to it within the contract. I wouldn't say we're endorsing it or, you know, concurring, but we're, you know, that's what we're essentially agreeing to by agreeing to the contract. And then and likewise, they also had noted that their hourly rate, you know, was undercharged, so they're going to increase that from 60 to 90 an hour in this agreement as well. So that's
a huge increase in this economic environment.
Right. I approve of that.
That's a huge increase in this economic environment. I you know, I'm sorry. You know, maybe in the past we just agreed to pass-throughs of that nature. I don't think we just kind of agree to those kinds of pass-throughs anymore. A 30% increase in salary in this economic environment? What?
Yeah.
I agree with you, Bill.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bill. Yeah.
Does this have to be approved, or what's the timing on this?
So they were requesting that each city approve it by June 15th. But if we have concerns, we go back to them with concerns. I don't see why we would approve it if we have concerns.
Bill, pardon me saying, part of our conversation at our next meeting is going to be the adoption of our budget. And if this is a contract, one of our problems in trying to control our costs are contracts, and they're going to increase a contract by this amount, as Bill says, in these economic times, it seems like, we got to have a better way, or at least a better understanding of what's happening to us.
Can we make a motion just to approve 1 year?
You could if you wish, yes.
Well, I'm going to make a motion we approve a 1 year contract.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Because of the time that they need it, that's written in stone, they need it by June 15, correct?
That's what they requested. I don't have a problem going back and talking to them if that's what we choose to do. But
I'm going to just make a motion for 1 year.
Okay, we got a motion. Do we have a second to that? I'll second it.
Okay, so I need clarity. Do we even have to do that right now? Can we postpone the 1 year and not get into any trouble, or is there going to be, I mean, they want us, so I think we can negotiate.
yeah, I think
It looks to me like they're trying to increase their income for the same reason we need to increase ours, only they're increasing theirs at our expense. We should know what we're doing. What are we going to give up to, $58,000 increase is as much as we give what the museum or have in the past. And we can't even afford to do what we've done in the past. So, okay. Do we want to approve that, or do we want to continue the matter to the next meeting?
Yeah, I want to make a motion that we direct James to send them a letter with our concerns, and if the city attorney agrees, we can postpone this to the next meeting.
I'm not aware of any legal requirement to make a decision by June 15th. The county's made the request, but I'm not aware of any statute that dictates the response by then.
And what are our concerns? We just don't want to do business at that price.
Yeah, I think we're in a stronger position if we don't agree to anything yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bill, you okay with that?
I don't know if I agree with that. Yeah. I think we came up with a simple plan of something just like this with the housing authority when we didn't do for 3 or 4 years our our housing numbers that we had to validate every year.
Oh, the
Arena.
The RENA. And all that did was cause us grief. So I'm not for kicking something like this down the road. I'd be for agreeing to 1 year and then negotiating anything after that. But kicking this down the road doesn't. Again, if we don't agree to it and they rescind their services, what are we going to do?
Okay.
And I'm sorry, the animal shelter in town is not set up to do what the county does. So until that agency in town comes to us and provides us with a letter of intent as to how they can provide those services, and now we have something to weigh, I'd be willing to listen.
I request a vote on my motion.
Okay. Sue's had her hand up.
I would normally agree with Randy on what he said, but I think due to the circumstances, the pandemic, our total lack of income, I think that we should tell them we don't have the money. See what happens.
Yeah, but if we do that on everything, like Randy says, they could just say, "Fine, you don't have the money, and you aren't getting the service till you come to an agreement with it." I don't think we want, roadkill and stuff, which only they provide a service for. Are we ready for a vote on Bill's motion?
Yes.
Okay. Well, is there
I have one question, Tony. What exactly is the 1 year and what's the number we're voting on, Bill? I just want to make sure I'm looking at that right there.
I believe that's $40,882.
Table 1, 2021. Yeah.
Just that 1 year, right, James?
Yeah.
Yes,
we can talk to them about the following years after we find out what's going to happen to us on everything else that we can't afford to do.
Well, there's two sections essentially. One is the shelter services for $40,000. The other is the field services for $46,000. And the challenge with the field services is they are typically the state mandated requirements, and we don't have really an alternative to perform those right now. So if we were doing 1 year, I would think we'd do both of those, the shelter services and field services.
That's the intent of my motion, is just the 1 year. I think that'll send a signal to them.
Well, what was weird, what I couldn't figure out is the field services are going up 50%. The other stuff is going up $2,200. So I don't, you said 30%. I'm so confused. But the $60 to $90 is the huge increase.
Yes, and that's a lot.
The
That's
50%
a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's still under market rate, it says, but that's the huge part. This 46.8 had to have been 50. This had to be $24,000, or I don't know, it would have been whatever 60 would have worked out in that is.
I think it was 32,000.
That's a lot less than the numbers.
We need the basic service, and Bill's motion is simply to give us 1 year rather than commit us to 5 years. and that sends the message that we need to talk to them. Now, if we go back to the same place at the end of the year, they may say, won't even use the expression, probably got, anyway, if you aren't going to pay for it, you're not going to get the service. So this gives us 1 year to sort this out and find out, the answer to all our questions. Okay, is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none. Okay, James.
Well, I have a question. Why is James? There's two separate parts, right? There's animal care services and then field services. We're only voting on one of those two right now, correct?
No, I understood it to be both of those for 1 year.
Right.
One's 40 and one's 46. So we're saying we'll approve both of those for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's why
I have a question. Bill, what is your objection to James bringing up these issues and then voting on it next time? You just want to get it done, or it's $53,000 for additional cost for minimal service? That's a chunk of money. Yeah.
I'm just trying to manage the situation where we send a signal but don't have an interruption of service.
Oh! Now, are you saying, that's what I don't understand? By not agreeing to it, there's going to be an automatic interruption of service?
I didn't say that. I'm concerned that the end of the fiscal year is June 30. So if we didn't approve it tonight, we'd have to come back next. I don't know, what their plans are. If they don't get approvals, they have to make plans for a continuous service beginning July 1. Our next meeting is at the end of July, the third week of June. I just didn't want to risk an interruption of service issue, but still send a signal.
Well, Mayor?
Randy?
Mayor, that's why I'm in total agreement with Bill's methodology, and it does give us some latitude to negotiate. But again, if you're not paying for a service, why would I provide it? It's real simple. And they have every right July 31st, if we don't have an agreement in place, for them to terminate it. They'd send us a termination letter and say, call Santa Paula, see if you'd like to use their services.
Well, Susan's question is if we don't do it tonight, does this automatically interrupt service? And we don't know that, do we, James? You said that they've asked us to get them an answer by the 15th.
Yes, they sent a request out to all cities asking, so that they could be prepared to provide service on July 1st if we could reply by June 15th. But there was no dealing with
their budget.
I just want to add, this contract is cancelable under 90 days notice by either party, anytime. 3 years, 100 years, doesn't matter. You can cancel it in 90 days anytime.
90 days.
We're all talking about this, but the reality is we keep a 90-day right to change it at any time.
Correct.
Let's vote.
3 years doesn't make any difference. If we don't like it, we say no. We got 90 days notice to renegotiate it. But
okay, we've allowed James can obligate us for 1 year and with a 90-day notice to get out of it. And if we get answers to these questions over the next couple of months, we can go ahead and get involved in a 5-year contract if there's some benefit to that. I don't see what it is other than they'd love to have us on the hook for that. Okay, I didn't hear any objection to approving it for 1 year. Okay.
Johnny,
do we need a roll call, Matt, because it's money?
Mr. Mayor, real quick. I just want to say the contract can't even be renewed for 5 years. It says only upon mutual agreement, this agreement may be renewed for up to 5 consecutive 1 year periods. You can't even do it for 5 straight years.
Okay, good. Then we're not in conflict with anything, right?
And to answer the other question, I don't, because it was on consent, no roll calls needed.
Okay, so ordered. All right, we're now to public comment. Do we have public comment, city manager, emails?
Yes, so we have emails. We've summarized them that we had. I'll just quickly, the general public comments today, we received 16 comments supporting pickleball hours being expanded at Libby Park. And all the other comments were on other items, so we will mention those when we get to them.
Okay.
Okay.
So we go to item number 2 then?
I would like to give I'm the liaison to the Green Coalition, and I just want to call your attention to the letter that they sent. I'll just read the first two paragraphs, because normally they would be at the podium, and they wanted to introduce us to their new board. The new board is, may I continue, Mayor?
Yeah, was this sent in under public comment?
Yes, this is public comment.
Okay, proceed.
Severo Lara is the new president of the Ojai Valley Green Coalition Board. And then Kathy Nolan is the vice president. Kit Stoltz is the board director, secretary. Michelle Ellison is on the board. Ray Powers, Janet Sajay-Knott, Christopher Anaker, and Tara Saylor. So it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 member board. And they're taking they've been meeting to, revision the purpose of the Ojai Valley Green Coalition. I've attended some of their Zoom meetings. And I'll read the letter that they sent today. Dear members of the Ojai City Council, we very much appreciate the support of the city of Ojai in recent years, and will attach separately a full report of our accomplishments, Earth Day, Ride and Roll, and our composting initiative with David White were in large part due to your support, as well as generosity of dozens of Ojai citizens who donated their time and budget this year. I'm having trouble reading because it's suddenly dark, but it's dark and I got to turn on some lights. Given the uncertainty in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, we believe that at this time, a more flexible approach is the best interest of all parties. Consequently, we have decided that we will not be requesting funding for the fiscal year 2020-21. And then I hope that you'll read the rest of the letter on your own. And then they have provided a biography and the Earth Day. There's an Earth Day report that was a huge success. You know, they had to change plans from doing it in Libby Park to a virtual Earth Day. And my understanding is that over 2,000 people have tuned in, and they have a fabulous library with all the speakers that's always available. And then they provided the budget that they spent for Earth Day. And I think that gives you a little overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you, Green Coalition, for understanding what we're up against. Okay, let's go to item number 2, the budget workshop. James.
Thank you. And I have a brief presentation.
I have to turn on my light.
The big message, I think, with the budget is this is now the third workshop that we have held for the budget. And we've talked before, people may be tired of hearing it, but it's a difficult year to budget, very volatile, very difficult to project. From one day to the next, it sounds like things are improving, and, you can get in trouble, feeling too optimistic. And then the next day, there's closures and you have to readjust. So we had talked about, we had a budget committee that we all felt pretty good about a proposed budget. The committee had reviewed it, thought it was pretty conservative and safe, and recommended it to City Council back on March 13th. 2 hours before we declared an emergency. And at that time, we had said revenues for the year looked to be at about $11.5 million. And then a month later, when we revised, we projected revenues to be $10.3 million. So, a $1.2 million drop in basically a month, which for a city with a budget our size, about a ballpark $10 to $11 million budget, that's a pretty large reduction, and difficult to balance that budget. We made we had reduced all of the new items, the contingency increase, some of the new contracts, some of the personnel costs to try to balance the budget. But even with that being said, we ended up with a $946,000 deficit. And this was the budget that we provided to the budget committee at April 24th and then council in early May. And at that time, when we presented this to council, we identified potential reductions that could be made to balance the budget. And quickly, I'll mention we had done the hiring freeze, which was $80,000 in savings, deferring, and that was a hiring freeze for a certain period of time, which could be expanded if needed, but we had set it through September. We deferred the pre-funding of the post-employment benefits, the $100,000. We recommended reducing the community funding to the 2019 level, so back to $114,000, which is a $72,000 reduction. We recommended deferring the transfer to the equipment replacement fund for this year because there's a sizable reserve in that fund. And then we recommended reductions in training and contract services. And then we recommended that was $412,000. So on the $946,000 deficit, that would get the deficit down to about $500,000. And so we also pointed out that we could defer the TOT transfer, the 20% transfer from TOT to the CIP for 1 year, and instead use Measure C funds to fund those. That's highlighted in red because we wanted to make sure the budget before you in the packet includes all these changes that subtotal $412,000. And so you'll note that the bottom line is that it shows a $585,000 deficit at this time.
Where's the 585, James? It says 510. But
right. So in our agenda packet, the deficit is 585, and so we had recommended using a $510,000 deferral to balance that to get, we'd be at $75,000 deficit. So it wouldn't get us all the way there, but it would get us pretty close to balance. And so we wanted to make sure when we came back, things are changing very quickly with the coronavirus and the recovery. So we wanted to kind of talk this through and mention that there's, a couple of factors going on. One is Measure C at this point, passed in March, but we still have not collected 1 cent of Measure C. We think that will change because we had implemented it delayed with a start date of June 1st to allow some of the businesses to recover. And now we are hearing that the county will be allowing hotels to reopen potentially beginning this weekend. They haven't stated that date, but that is what everybody's preparing for. So potentially we could start collecting Measure C funds. If we collect Measure C funds, there's funding for these projects at this time, which include almost $1 million for road overlays, $112,000 for Libby Park improvements, $58,000 for the Sarzotti Park light poles, $8,500 for the portable speed radar, $56,000 for parking lot improvements, $76,000 for the Stewart Canyon restoration project. That's the city match required for that project, and $79,000 for city hall repairs. And so, if Measure C, if TOT recovers and we were able to collect Measure C, we could use it to fund these projects. We'd still be able to do projects that we wouldn't have been able to do without Measure C, even with that 20% transfer. I think we all know the road rehab we tended to do every other year, and this would be the start of being able to do it every year. So one positive thing is we're seeing the impact that Measure C will have on the city, even in challenging times. And when things are going really well, it'll really be adding to the projects that we can do to benefit the public. So we wanted to come back and talk about this. 2 weeks ago, when we started to put this report and presentation together, it wasn't clear if the hotels were going to be able to reopen. And so we wanted to say, hey, we need to be aware that, you know, we might not collect Measure C like we were hoping we would. Now it's looking a little more positive, but it also, that just goes to show you how difficult right now it is to tell where we're going to end up, you know, 6 months or a year down the road. And so essentially right now, the budget before you has these changes that are listed in black. They do not have the TOT transfer is not yet included. So that's why they're still showing as a $585,000 deficit. Our recommendation that we put together, again, things have changed quickly, but we had recommended and called, hoping that City Council approves a budget committee meeting for this Friday for the budget committee to thoroughly review and determine if they are comfortable with our projections. One thing, I'll give you an example of something we want to look at with the budget committee, and that is we had projected a 13% reduction in property tax this year because when we were projecting the budget, the state had talked about was considering deferrals, and there were a lot of fears that people were not going to be able to pay their property tax this year. And again, it shows you how quickly things change. And, you know, 2 months later, that does not appear to be a concern. The state is no longer talking about deferrals. So there's a couple of categories that we want to go back and walk through with the budget committee and see if there's maybe a couple of changes that we can recommend and bring back to the next council meeting for adoption.
James, you know, on that other slide where you were showing what might be paid for out of Measure C.
Yes.
The Sarasota light poles are already under contract, right?
Yes.
And the Stewart Canyon Restoration City Match, that grant's been accepted. Is that right?
We have accepted that. Yes, we met with them.
So that's about $130,000 that even if we never collect a dime under Measure C, we're still going to have to come up with $130,000, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll come before Budget Committee, Budget and Finance. We can include that in the next workshop.
Yes.
Okay, thank
I have
you.
a question about that slide, Mayor.
Oh.
Susan?
Okay. How bad are the parking lot improvements? How bad are the parking lots?
There's a couple that are pretty bad. You know, one of the ones, there's a few on there, but like the Lower Libby lot, was pretty much half done, and we want to get the rest of it done. So there's a couple that are pretty bad, and you know, that's something we can go through with a fine-tooth comb. We do think at this point, with the latest news that businesses are going to be able to reopen this week, you know, potentially this weekend is what we're hearing. We do think that the Measure C projections, you know, could be close. For a while there, we were sweating it, but you know, we do think that there's a possibility of that. So.
Yeah. It's very high probability. We're certainly going to have the money for something like $56,000 for the parking lot of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that. Okay.
Yeah, I think, you know, most likely in this situation, it'd be we'd hold off on road overlays or something towards the end of the year, and then you know, start prioritizing if money is not coming in. So.
In the City Hall repairs, are those cosmetic or is something falling apart?
Yeah, we have a couple things that are falling apart. Our arbor, the pergola. I'm sorry. Yeah, the pergola is in disrepair, and then we have a couple roofing issues that, you know, I'm not a fan of representing City Hall by having a bucket under a leak. So we want to make those, you know, make our community proud with you know, with some adequate, decent facilities here. So.
Okay, Randy has his hand up. Randy?
Mayor, I just have one.
We'll come back to you. That's it. Okay, Randy?
In your budget committee meeting, could you also discuss the payback of the reserves and how we're going to achieve that? And how, and what, you know, how soon, how fast, and what percentage? I think it's important that we have that. You have that discussion, and it comes back to council. Fine. We're going to be pretty depleted pretty fast.
Yeah.
And we can't have 16 years waiting for this to come back to our 3.5.
We're going to have to budget more aggressively than that.
Yep.
Okay, Susan.
Okay, thank you. When you mentioned the pergola, are you talking about the little patio area in front of City Hall?
Yeah,
it's the beam that's sagging.
Yeah, there's a sagging beam that we've put some makeshift repairs there, but we need to replace the beam at some point.
So while you're at it, what happened to the bench that was there?
That's a good question. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'll find out.
I think it's really important. It sends the right message if we have a bench there.
Yeah.
When I come, I have to always sit on the steps, which I don't mind, but some people wouldn't be able to get up.
Yeah.
So yeah, include a bench, please.
Okay.
And was there? Oh, I just want to clarify. The budget committee is the mayor, Bill Wyrick. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. And the city treasurer, Alan Raines, and Steve Olson.
And who?
Steve Olson.
Steve Olson. Thank you.
The citizen representative.
Yeah, that's good. Good to have Steve on there.
So we've tentatively scheduled a meeting for Friday to review and go through a couple of those categories that, like I said, there's a couple like property tax that we don't want to just all of a sudden increase or decrease something without really analyzing, but we do think that there's a couple that are worth looking at. So, and then in the packet, there's a couple more slides here, just a couple of key points. In the packet are budget requests from 3 organizations. As Councilmember Francina mentioned, the Green Coalition today submitted saying that they are not requesting any funding this year. And so we have the Ojai Valley Museum, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Arts Commission. As we mentioned, we had reduced the community organization funding to the prior year's amount, which is $114,000 for the organizations, and then the Arts Commission was separate from those. But this is showing last year's, which was the increase, and we wanted to make note because we never really monetized this or put it in a dollar format, but we also wanted to make sure we recognize that we do provide facilities to both the museum and the Help of Ojai, and even at a very low square footage cost, there's the city does do a lot for the community, even though I think sometimes we aren't great, telling people that. So,
under $1 million worth, yeah.
Are we going to? Can you go back to that? Are we going to discuss the funding for this year?
So that's council's option at this point. My thought was we provide all the requests. We wanted to make sure we gave those to council with time for council to review it and consider it. So we can do that at the next meeting, or if we want to have that discussion now. But
next meeting is fine. Yeah.
And then lastly, we just wanted to reiterate too, because we know this is a tough year. I think usually in years past, it was always the discussion was more focused on what important thing do we need to add? And obviously this year is different. The conversation is what can we live without? And, what's critical versus the wish list. And, but I did want to point out, these are mostly grants or Measure C funded. So when we said that in our last budget that, we had laid out, staff costs and different things, and there wasn't a lot of climate related projects there. It's not that we're not doing them. It's that we've been able to leverage, other funds and other grants. And so for a city with a $10 million budget is essentially what we're proposing. We have the ATP project, which was discussed in here. There's $2.3 million for construction and $500,000 for design and right-of-way acquirement or acquisition. So that's $2.8 million. We have $890,000 to do the Stewart Canyon habitat restoration project. And, I know this one gets a groan, but we are planning to increase code enforcement on the gas equipment prohibition, which is another, climate related project. And so if you really look at it from that perspective, we, almost 30% or over 30%, almost 40% equivalent of our budget is focused on climate related projects. So, there's always going to be a statement that we could do more, but for a city our size, we do put a heavy focus on, backing up our vision and our goals of being a climate resilient city.
Okay, Susan?
Okay, so the first item on the ATP, bike and pedestrian, is that coming from the grant or is that taxpayer money?
So it's grant funding.
It's grant funding.
It's grant funding, but I will say, as people have seemed to have noticed in the report, was that the city did provide some match to it in the past. So, but the 2.8 million is the grant funding for the project.
Okay. But all money is taxpayer money, directly or indirectly.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that's an important point to clarify, because we've gotten a number of letters objecting to spending taxpayer money. And I think we need to make clear that the ATP is a grant specifically for this, for active transportation project. That's what it is.
Correct. It's not local taxpayer money. It is money from the state and through the carbon credits fund, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are correct. And they are not, when people say we're spending, wasting taxpayers' money, that is not quite accurate. That's obviously somebody who doesn't like the program. But Bill.
Quick question, James.
Yes.
On code enforcement, this kind of question comes up every once in a while, and I'll just ask it again. And that is the volunteer police services group. I guess that program is still up and running. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. And is it still up and running, that volunteer citizens police thing? And,
yes,
and every once in a while it comes up, and the question becomes, why can't they help be some of the eyes on code enforcement? Not giving citations and stuff, but just documenting information and relaying it, be integrated into the code enforcement fabric. Just asking the question, why not?
Yeah, we had actually, the chief and I had talked about, right before the coronavirus hit, we had talked about creating some flyers with, the gas engine prohibition and a couple other things, and seeing if we could get some of those volunteers to go and hand those out, on weekends or things like that. So we've, we haven't made as much progress maybe on it as I would have liked under the circumstances, but it's something we'll revisit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, James, are you finished with your part? And I see a hand from Susan. Just a second, Susan.
Yeah, okay, so that's our report. So happy to answer any questions.
Okay, and then we're going to have some comments that we got by email. But Susan, you have your hand up.
Is our reason for not moving forward with electrifying the city, cutting out, phasing out gas, at least at City Hall, is that financial, or what is the delay on that? And remember, at this time last year, I think we were discussing electrifying the city and solar and all of that. Is there going to be an update on that?
Yeah, I can briefly update. We had met with several providers of the solar projects, and we were working pretty hard with one of them to get something moving, and it turned out that we essentially were too small for them to really be able to work with us on a power purchase agreement that would make sense. So we hit a snag. We had worked pretty hard with one group in particular. It's something we'd still explore, and we plan to still explore, and we still have staff exploring it, but we don't have a firm estimate yet. There were a couple of different approaches. One was we could have purchased equipment, which would have been a large upfront cost. The other is we'd enter into this power purchase agreement where it's a monthly cost. And some of those have said that they can do those at lower costs than, your electric bill, for example. And that was the one we were pursuing. And then it just recently, I would say in March, they let us know that it wasn't going to work for the facilities our size. So we'll still pursue those, but we just don't have a real cost or estimate at this point. We're still in the exploratory phase.
So can I ask a question about that? So when you say facilities your size, you're not like a home, and you're not big enough. You're somewhere in between. Because
yes, for the power purchase agreement, they wanted, they wanted a large facility where they could put lots of solar panels and generate a lot of electricity. We were not large enough, and we actually tried to partner with we talked with the school district, and the school district was open to partnering with us on it. And then after reviewing that, they ultimately decided even that was not large enough to be useful for them. So.
Okay, but you're still working on it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, James, or who has the, I noticed a summary statement that Gail sent me regarding comments on the budget workshop. Do you have those?
Yeah, and we have a summary. I'll just read that real quick. We had one comment from Michelle from the Climate Committee, encouraging the city to focus more resources on climate crisis mitigation. We have one comment from a resident, Natasha Efros, saying the city should spend more money on social services. One comment, as Councilmember Francina mentioned, from the Green Coalition and Kathy Nolan with an update on the status of the Green Coalition. And then we received 65 comments encouraging the city to review the law enforcement services budget, and they're, the comments that are in line with the current the protests and the request from the public for us to reconsider our law enforcement. So those were the comments for this.
Okay. Yes, Susan.
We received one letter that's I think over 60 or 65 people signed. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for the public to know that if this is correct, the city of Ojai spends approximately 1/3 of its general fund on the contract with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. Such a large sum of money deserves additional oversight, particularly in light of ongoing police use of force, abuses, and militarization of police forces nationwide. And it's my understanding that we're going to address that in a separate item, because you'll be meeting with Sheriff Bill Ayub. Mm-hmm. That's correct. So we'll discuss that. But I just want to I'm glad that we have such an engaged public that is concerned and is, looking at the situation. I think that needs to be acknowledged. We had a lot of good comments. So I don't know. I wanted to ask Bill. Bill, are you going to comment on the contract? Is that?
Yes, it's interesting. I think there might be a real opportunity here for a constructive engagement with the Sheriff's Department. Since 2012, they've been under a grand jury recommendation to execute updated contracts with all the contract cities. And we know that hasn't really happened. And then there's the issue of whether contracts should be standardized for all contract cities or individualized for each contract city's particular community characteristics. And we developed a lot of information a few years ago, and I've been revisiting that and plan on updating some of the statistics. And I think that I'm getting a sense, and James, you could correct me if I'm wrong, I'm getting a sense that everybody's ready to look at things with new eyes. And I think that includes the sheriff. And I think if they view individualized contracts and other kinds of reforms as strengthening the community relationship, the alienation of which I think is the cause of a lot of the problems we're seeing nationwide. And we've got a pretty good collaborative community relationship with our Sheriff's Department, and maybe putting in structures to strengthen that. I think we might have a real positive chance to move forward constructively. I don't know, James, you've had some discussion with that, Mayor, you have too, but that's my sense right now.
Thank you.
Okay, James, is there anything else on this before we go to the next item?
No, that's all I have. Thank you.
I have one other question. and I meant to ask last budget session about the 15,000 for the pickleball noise mitigation.
Mm-hmm.
That item still, I'm still questioning that. I keep researching whether that's really a good investment. Now, can we legally ask them to pay all the pickleball players to pay all or part of that, considering that we're in dire straits financially? And, there's other costs associated now with the whole, maybe that. So
I think we're really ready for that conversation. We haven't even got a report that says that the sound buffers, which ones work and how much they cost.
I think we need to think this through if we're going to charge specific groups. Why don't we think about that for the tennis people during the tennis tournament? Why don't we think about that, for all the noise and all the people that on Farmers Market Day? I think we need to think that through, Sousa. I'm not sure if that's a viable methodology.
I have thought it through, and I think this is a different situation from the ones that you mentioned. And I know that you have a different opinion, but that's my thought is that I don't know if that's money well spent.
Okay, well, okay, that would be a policy decision as part of the next workshop.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let's go to the lighting assessment and landscape district. This is a public hearing, so first I guess we get staff report before I open the hearing.
Thank you, and we are kind of operating with this virtual meeting. It's a little strange for public hearings. So what we've asked people is that we're taking email public comments up until the time that we open the public hearing, so people could still comment on this at this time. But briefly, we have the first item is the assessments for lighting and landscaping district. The districts were established in Ojai to provide necessary funding for electricity and maintenance costs for the city's network of streetlights. Property owners in the districts pay primarily for streetlights, but also for maintenance and improvements of sidewalks, curbs, gutters, and street trees if funding allows. The average owner pays approximately $41 per year for each parcel, and city-owned parcels, the city pays for its parcel similarly, and will pay $1,459 in this fiscal year, and for their property, for the city's property, but then we'll also pay $6,350 for general community benefit services. The positive note for both this one and the next one, which I'll get to, is that due to the increases in the past, the fund balance is now positive and not a deficit anymore. The fund for this district will have approximately $156,000 in it, with $26,000 of annual surplus. And so at the end of June 30th, 2021, there will be a fund balance of $181,000. At this time, what we are recommending for that, because we have 156 right now, we'll have 181 at the end of the year. So we are recommending maintaining a $150,000 reserve and for the eventual replacement of streetlight fixtures for dark sky compliant LED lighting and emergency repairs. So with that, this is the public hearing to levy that assessment, which, as we said, is an average of $41 per parcel.
I have a staff question there.
Yeah, Bill.
James, two things.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about replacing. These are still. Edison still is the operator of these poles, I thought, right? I mean, we haven't taken that back.
Yes, that's correct.
So we would pay Edison, reimburse them to put the LED dark sky fixtures in?
So we were saying for eventual replacement, but I don't know exactly what time frame we are looking at for that. So.
Yeah, two questions on that. There was talk before the COVID-19 hit, about the cities working together to be able to have the state allow us the option of taking back our right-of-way.
Yeah.
So that we would realize the immediate benefit of things like LED replacement, because right now, I believe Edison still is running a rate schedule where they don't reduce the energy charge to the lighting districts when you do a replacement for LED. Is that still in place as well?
I'm not sure. I see Greg, our Public Works Director, Greg Grant, on the Zoom. Greg, are you there?
Hi, good evening, Council. Sorry, I'm at my desk and my camera is not up and running, so I'll get that going for next meeting. But yeah, I think the quick answer on that is Edison first came out with an increase in the tariff for LED lighting. There was a protest.
Makes no sense.
Yeah, it made no sense. Statewide, there was a protest, and they came back with a new tariff that was adopted. I think it's almost been 2 years now. And that was actually a decreased rate to go to the LED. It's a very minor decrease, but it is, instead of an increase, a slight decrease. And they were supposed to cycle through the LEDs. I know the county was going to swap to the LEDs, and they were hot on the first list to try to get it swapped. But I know there was a lot of concern and pushback from certain cities about the brightness of the light. It was up in the higher white light temperatures, up around 4,000 or 5,000 Kelvin. And so they were delayed, and now they are coming out with these newer LEDs, which have lower temperatures down to 3,000 Kelvin or so, which is a bit closer to HBS, but still not that temperature. So everybody seems to have delayed a bit getting them in. Some cities have, like you're saying, either purchased or owned them previously and moved ahead with the LED. But we're waiting. We're hoping Monterey Oaks was supposed to be soon to get their LED in so we can see how it looks and make sure we like it before we push Caltrans.
Is there any change in allowing us to take back control of this infrastructure, so we realize the immediate benefits of investing in our lighting poles and being able to use the
number one, it's been
different things?
Yeah, right. Number one, it's been mixed reviews from a lot of cities that have taken them over, that it's not as easy to maintain as we might think. And secondly, if there's a power pole with a light on it, they won't turn it over to you. It has to be a dedicated light pole. So we have certain parts of the city with dedicated light poles, but a lot of them are, these power poles that are being replaced like crazy with a light pole on it.
Okay, but the question is that we were blocked from exercising that option.
Right. Okay, but I'm going to interrupt here, Bill. Those are good questions, and they're policy questions.
All right, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Okay, do we have anything else regarding the rate? Randy, on rates?
Well, not on the rate. I just had another question for Greg. Have we done an assessment of the actual needs of the community, Greg, as far as spending money in these lighting districts? So have you assessed the sidewalks? Have you assessed the streets? Have you assessed the lights? Or are we just saying, we're going to just earmark $156,000 for reserve, and then the next monies that come in, we're going to try and do LED lights? How did you come up with the priority? Or that's all. I'd like more information on that from you.
And where are the dark spots? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where's what was that one? The dark spots, did you say?
Yeah, where have we evaluated where the dark spots are, where the community needs are?
Right. I guess, there's been pushback back and forth with the dark sky. I mean, some people push for,
But that's different from dark spots. Dark sky is how you direct the light. Dark spots is.
But guys, are we going to modify the rates as a result of this conversation, or are we going to approve the rates and then have the conversation as to before we allow any of it to be spent?
I move approval.
One final question on rates, Bill. Mayor, just one final question on rates. Greg, is this the third or fourth or fifth year that we have not increased rates?
For the for the lighting district, they have not been improved. There's been no increase in lighting districts for, I think it was 2006. The Plaza districts, I think, where we increased the fees a few years ago, that was 5% per year for 5 years.
So the question is, since 2006 to 2019 or 2020, we paid a debt off, and we've generated $156,000, which doesn't do a lot for the community. When do you think that you would want to increase?
Well, I guess two parts to that. One is that there was a major deficit in this district back.
We paid that off.
And now we paid that off, and now we're generating the surpluses accumulating. So that's where we're now up to this, this $26,000 per year surplus. So now we've got supplemental accumulated surplus, and we can actually start dedicating that to improving curb, gutter, sidewalk, and vegetation, trees, and so on along the various frontages.
I guess my question is, $26,000 buys us what? And at what point do you think you need more?
Right. I'm trying to remember. I believe back when they tried to increase this, I'm not certain on that, but it passed in 2006, but they tried before that. It did not pass. So there's a question. It's a fairly expensive effort to put out, gather together a request for an increase. And you've got to, it's a Prop 218. So you've got to go out to every parcel owner and get the majority support for that to pass. And there's a question whether that would be supported when we already have some.
But do we have a project or something? Why would we be wanting to raise rates if we're generating a surplus?
Well, there's always curb, gutter, sidewalk that we could keep improving around the city.
Well, yeah, but is that the primary purpose of a lighting district, or is that just a way to spend the money?
It was secondary. There was a first lighting district. One was set up for primarily lighting, and then the supplemental was passed with a commitment to try to support curb, gutter, sidewalk, and tree work along the frontages as well. Okay. And that was passed, yeah.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and open the hearing, and then we'll bring it back for deliberation. Okay. Is there any other question to staff before we open the hearing?
No.
Okay. The public hearing is now open. James, do we have any?
No, I just received a confirmation here from the deputy city clerk that we have no public comments at this time.
Okay, there are no public comments, and I'm going to close the public hearing. We are now under deliberation. I think Bill was with a motion a while back.
Yeah, I moved approval, but there was no second.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? We always have the opportunity to come back and revisit this to kind of pursue what he's getting at, which is what do we want to do and how are we going to spend the money properly?
Yeah.
Okay, that can come up during the budget hearing. Okay, if there's no further discussion, do we need a roll call on this one, Matt?
That we do.
Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Blatz? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Blatz?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Francina?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Johnston?
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Now that was a motion to adopt the resolution. Do we need any more? James, did I get all that in one motion, or do we have to have separate motion?
I understood that to be all in one motion.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so ordered, all done. Thank you. We're now the levying the collection for the plaza maintenance. James.
Thank you. And very similarly, this is the maintenance district for the arcade plaza for utility and maintenance costs for the arcade plaza. We completed a large renovation of the plaza back in 2002, but as we get further from that, almost 2 decades later, we are having to perform an increasing number of maintenance and repairs. And so as the Public Works Director mentioned, we had increased the assessments for this a few years back, and we are now out of the deficit, or we're projecting to be out of the deficit for the fund. And we are projecting a $50,000 surplus at the end of the fiscal year. Similar to the last maintenance district, the city will pay a portion of the assessments. We project that the annual revenues will be $197,000, and $178,000 of that will be assessments, with $144,000 coming from private property owners and $33,000 coming from the city for its parcels. And then the difference is the $17,000 general benefit cost paid for by the city.
Okay, do you have a program for what the at some point the surplus will be used for? Same kind of questions Randy was asking on the last one.
Yeah, yes, we've identified several repairs, but I think like everything else now we'll probably be revisiting those and bringing those back to council as our financial situation has changed recently.
Okay, other members of the council, you have questions of staff? If not, then I will open the hearing. Public hearing is open. Mr. City Manager, do you have any, or clerk, do we have any comments or?
Same, no comments, same as the last item.
Okay, then we will close the public hearing. And is there any further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Okay, we got a motion to approve. A second? I'll second it. Okay, it's been seconded. No magic trick. Susan's disappeared. Okay, we have motion moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, will the clerk call the roll?
Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Blatz?
Yes.
Councilmember Francina?
Yes.
Mayor Johnston?
Yes. Okay, motion carried. We will go to item number 5, the emergency response and update. James.
Thank you. And yesterday we had a economic recovery task force meeting, which the city council had appointed Councilmember Wyrick and Councilmember Haney to the economic recovery task force. We met yesterday, and the task force, we pulled in the the Chamber of Commerce President Jamie Fleming. And so yesterday at the recovery task force meeting, the task force agreed that it would be good to have Jamie give an update. And so he is here in council chambers. So I will turn it over to him for a brief update on the latest as we move into this economic recovery portion of the coronavirus recovery. And I'll turn this over. We're just
Hey, Jamie.
Just current. Just current, I think, and then we'll let them ask questions.
There you go. Thank you for having me come. First, I just want to say when I took this job 2 years ago, just after the Thomas fires, I received so many comments from people how much the chamber had pretty much disappeared during the Thomas fires. And I wanted to be sure that the chamber did not disappear at all during this pandemic. So it's been wonderful to be able to partner with James and the city and also with our other partner, the EDC. It's just been something that no one can do on their own, but it's amazing how nice it is when you get some good partnerships going. Everyone works well together. I'm going to skip ahead. I just want everyone to know that most of the disaster loans have pretty much been communicated out, and all the information. We're pretty much almost at the deadline where those loans won't be able to be received. That's one of the things we really try to finish up. But one of the biggest things that it's a committee that we have, which is, as James was saying, it's James, myself, Chris with the Ojai Valley Inn, Bill, and Randy. We've been meeting once a week, if not sometimes twice a week, to really get a handle on what we need to do as far as protocols, especially while we're trying to open as carefully and as safely as the state and county have rushed almost to do this per instance. And as you know from our numbers, we're all really excited to at least still see that the numbers are really low. It's nice to see people walking around with face masks. You always know the locals versus the visitors on the weekends. But the fact that every time James' department or the chamber or any of us walk into a store with a sign or the protocols, the business owners thank us. They can't tell us how much they're grateful that we really care for the safety of their employees. And I have to commend James. The facial sign that they came up with, we at the chamber, we went through 60 in about a few days when we first needed to get signage up to the businesses. And the city stepped right up and started printing signs that we could then refer businesses directly from the city. But what's great is James was able to put on there a reference to the code enforcement, or what do you call it? What's it called?
Executive order.
Executive order, right on the sign. And what's beautiful about that is the store owners and the retailers and the restaurant owners like that, because when a customer comes in who's not from Ojai and starts getting a little huffy about having to have a face mask on, it's wonderful that the owners and the retailers all keep pointing and saying, look, it's not us, it's a city order. And it's been wonderful, and it's really, I think, made a huge difference to have that extra team in what we're doing. So the committee, it's very complex when you think about it. Each industry is a little different. And what the county, if you weren't aware, what the county has been doing is they send out 8-page, 12-page lists of dense protocols, but they are asking the store owner or business owner to actually fill in what their plan is going to be per line item. And we as a committee felt it made much more sense to really focus, which we did per industry, with a lot of buy-in from people in the industries, what we would then recommend from Ojai's point of view that would address the state and county regulations. But we would then have it written out as a checklist. And the store and retailers have been so grateful because it saved them days, if not hours, of trying to weed through, think of what to say. We're giving them right now. Here's what you do as far as your cashier areas. Here's what you do with your queue lines. Here's what you do with your spacing in your displays. Here's what you do with your customers. And we laid it all out. And we did it we start off with, the retail stores with no customers allowed inside. Then we did restaurants doing takeout. Then we did protocols for retail stores with customers inside. By the time the county and the state got to restaurants, it was almost like a book of regulations. And so we took it upon ourselves to really go through the density of all those protocols. And I was able to come up with, which was endorsed by the committee, 10 key protocols that actually covered about 4/5 of all the protocols in those 8 to 12 pages. We still require them to do the 8 to 12 pages, but at least it gave them a chance to see 10 bullet points. As if you focus on these right away, you're way ahead of the game, and we're going to be so happy. And the rest, just you have to take care of. But that's, I think, something that really has helped especially the restaurants. And of course, right now we've already turned over to the hotels the protocols. That does not include the Ojai Valley Inns. Theirs are very complex. It's a whole different type of resort, as you know. But right now, tomorrow, I'm meeting with all the hotel owners to discuss any issues they might have. Again, it's an anticipated opening Friday, but I think the way the county has done it in the past, Thursday night at midnight, they'll announce it, and we'll get going for the weekend with the hotels, is my guess. I want to also thank, 2 people in the community really stepped forward to help us on the committee with these protocols, and I just want to thank them. Jade Whitman of the Blue Iguana just put in lots and lots of time to help us with the boutique hotel type protocols. And Heidi McElvaney, she's a Toba Toba Brewery. Again, put in so much time to really give us good insights from a restaurateur's point of view, what they would recommend that we would follow as a city. And I again, can't commend James what he's been able to do, but as a partner, where we've been able to try and supplement and help the city, that's been our biggest goal, especially communicating. And I think a lot of you have received our communications. And I just want to mention the one trick that we've done with those is, if I'm on the mailing list of just about every chamber, and I always kind of smile because what they would do is they would cut and paste 10 million lines of protocol verbiage, or this is what's happening. And they would just cut and paste and send out to your businesses. And if you noticed on our communications that we have been sending out, we drilled down. I spent all the time to go through, and we will have one quick blurb and a link to exactly where to go to sign up with the county to register. Here's exactly where to go for this, and here are the protocols. And we try and make it a lot easier, because even I glaze over trying to read half the stuff that the county and all this out. I know James probably glazes over too. It's almost too much. The one thing that we're working on right now is we're trying to get this now supporting our local businesses. And I think you'll be happy to know we've already gotten a banner all printed. It's ready to go. And as soon as the banner space is available, we can hang that. And I think it'd be wonderful if we keep getting that spirit going out, that the businesses are opening up. That's pretty much a quick summary of where we are right this moment. Any questions or?
Well, thank you, Jamie, for all that you're doing. You certainly have had a presence, not unlike before the Thomas Fire.
Well, we're really grateful, and it's been a great relationship with James and the city. And I also have to commend the EDC. The Chamber's never pretended that we're experts at loans, but there are about 8 loans that we were trying to communicate out. It was nice to be able to have such a relationship with the EDC also over the years, that I was able to get our members and our businesses to go use their free business assistance to walk people through some of these loans. And I think even Bill Wyler commented to me once, because he's very involved with the EDC, that our numbers for Ojai really showed that our businesses were taking good advantage of these free consultants. So that's another thing I think we did correctly here in Ojai.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Randy.
Mayor, just one quick question for Jamie. I know that there's been talk about, closing down streets or a street to try and create a better business environment for the groups that are adjacent to it. Let's say Matilaha. Jamie, have you been? You're in touch with that community? Is there a cry out for it, or a large group of people wishing for it, or at this stage, because everyone's just opening, are they just trying to get open and trying to get on their feet?
Well, that's a really good point. Both James and I have repeatedly walked the streets to analyze where we might want to take advantage of these concepts that we hear. Right now, as you might be aware, both James and I have been aggressively letting the restaurants especially know that we are willing, well, the city is, but I'm pushing it, to open up sidewalks as an option, parking lots, the grass area in the arcade, the plaza area in the arcade, the plaza by Libby Park, the city parking lot there. We're ready to do whatever it takes to encourage them to work with James, and James has offered that his team is very willing. So I've heard from James at our last committee meeting that we've already had, about 6?
I think we're up to 8.
8 stores, restaurants now already have contacted the city and are working out how they can expand their outdoor seating, because as you know, the protocols are very strict on the inside as far as space. And I have not heard yet to this time any restaurant saying, boy, I wish we could be out on the street. And that is always, I guess, an option we can look at later, but I have not seen the need for a whole street to be closed for that yet. We have not even taken advantage of the sidewalks, in my opinion.
Well, I'd like to think if the need comes up and the ask comes in, that we'd be behind it.
I just want to make it clear, I've talked to restaurants that absolutely do want to move on to Ojai Avenue. Ojai Beverage Company, George told me, first time I asked him, undoubtedly, he'd love to access it. And when I talked to Topa Topa last weekend, when they had an hour and a half late because they're so limited in space, they said they didn't know what was available, but they would definitely be willing to look into it. So the feedback I'm getting is not consistent with that, but I think that once the hotel's open and we're going to have even more robustness, the amount of capacity the restaurants have is obviously ultimately up to them to some extent. But there was an over 45-minute wait at OBC this weekend. There was an hour and a half wait at Topa Topa. looking at the amount of percentage of opening that they can manage at this point. If they don't have additional space, they're going to have a really hard time. So I think it's worth revisiting that, making sure, because I got the feedback from George at OBC that he thought the city wasn't willing to do that, that they were too cumbersome to work with, and that there's a lot of fear in asking the city for anything because they're worried that we are not cooperating with them. So
that's interesting. George is the one who put all those tents up in the parking lot. He's got more capacity than probably any restaurant in town right now.
He did, and I asked him that, Randy. I said, hey, you're the one who had it out here first, but the first feedback he got too was that the city came over and told him, you're not doing it right and you need to redo it. So there was some question about how that was going down. It's hard. The reality of the situation is the relationship between the city council and the businesses is not great. And they're not necessarily comfortable with all this. And I just want to make sure we're getting them all those options, because I don't think TOPA, OBC, it's going to be really hard for them to operate at the capacity they have now. I don't know what the right answer is, but as we were really busy this weekend as a town, but that didn't include leisure travel. So if it's bigger, I'm hearing a lot from my hotel people that a lot of their reservations are only full for this upcoming week with anticipation, but that a lot of the reservations aren't your normal weekend stuff. They're 4 or 5 day stays, which may mean that there's an opportunity to make back some of the economic losses in a community that's usually weekend based by just making sure, not obviously we can't force anybody, but I want to make sure that all these restaurants know, and I know they're not listening now, but we got to do whatever we can, because like I said, OBC with the 45-minute wait is losing a lot of money, and same with TOPA and some of the other places.
As I said, I think the city, from what I've done, is very open to work with them. I'm just letting you know that TOPA, to me, is the only one that we've always known might have a little bit of a problem, because they're not blessed with a parking lot next door, and it's kind of a big Ojai Avenue in front of them. OBC, I just drove by them today, and they're definitely in their parking lot, and so I know that they're taking advantage of that so far. But I've sent more emails to these restaurants, and I will continue to do so just to keep encouraging them. But we have to hear from them, and I'm willing.
And there's a cost to closing a state highway. So, it would have to be weighed against the gain and the advantage. If the businesses, or only one business wants to do it, you can't very well use Ojai Avenue for that purpose alone. I mean, to spread the cost over.
Absolutely. I think the important part is we have to make the businesses feel comfortable to come to us with creative ideas, rather than them waiting for us to give them creative ideas, and figure out where that balance is and give them some options. I mean, these are options that every other city is trying to make available. I don't know, again, like if we, for example, if we needed to close a small section of, what would it be? Montgomery, South Montgomery right there may be an opportunity to do that. Maybe it's not Ojai Avenue. Maybe since there's a 4-restaurant cluster right there and no interaction with traffic that can't go around, maybe something like that. But I went out and checked them out this weekend. It was really strange. I mean, TOPA, like I said, an hour and a half wait, and there weren't anybody standing in line outside, so you just put your name in and did whatever. OBC had people walking away too. I just hope we can capture some of that, right? Obviously, them not turning away capacity if the city becomes full with leisure travel is an opportunity for them to try and get closer to making some money back.
I think you, Brian, just hit one of the best ideas I've heard yet, and I could see it easily, and that is that Montgomery top end before it hits Ojai Avenue, just a small section there, because the parking can still be accessed to the Nest and those other restaurants on the east side of Ojai Avenue. And then if we went south just far enough, we don't need a whole lot of space, but I think that might be a really neat place for people to be able to have a cluster, as you said, a cluster of restaurants, which include Topa Brewery. I know that the restaurants don't want to take foods too far, so be a little conscious of that, but I like your idea about the cluster there, and that might be a really cool place that doesn't really affect, in my opinion, we can work the traffic. But again, that's James, I know would jump on that, as to at least look into it.
Yeah, that makes sense. We have a lot more control of that.
Like that.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, James, where are we?
We had my hand up for a while.
Okay, Bill.
I cut Bill off a little bit.
Yeah, right.
A couple of things I want to make. First of all, I want to take issue with some of the characterization that Councilperson Blatch just said about in terms of the nature of the city outreach. I know for a fact that Jamie and James have gone out of their way to be in proactive contact with businesses. And most of the businesses that I have talked to have been acknowledging and very positive about the kind of relationship and the outreach they have gotten. So I'm not really sure, I'm getting a very different perception from the constituent businesses that I've talked to in terms of the feeling about, in terms of the level and the very constructive outreach by both James and Jamie. So Councilperson Blatz, I think we're having a difference of perception here that's pretty different in terms of how the city has been, constructively engaged with the business community. And I think that we've been seeing a better constructive engagement than since I ever took office in terms of what I'm seeing especially led by James and Jamie. And I also want to say that, I'm willing to listen to everybody, but the general impression I'm getting is somewhat different in terms of the perception of the city's willingness to constructively engage. For example, I know for a fact that James and Jamie were going around saying, very aggressively, please let us know when you open up into the patios, open up into the parking lots, let us know. And those requests were immediately responded to very appropriately and very constructively. I mean, we can't have a situation where people just say we can just go anywhere, without at least submitting a plan. And I think that's indeed what all the city's been asking for is give us a plan and we'll process it very quickly. Now, if they don't want a plan, then that's a problem. If they don't want to submit a plan, then that's a problem because we have to manage the overall issues of parking and public safety. The other thing I want to mention is that Jamie is being too modest, Mr. Fleming. We have gone from being years of way below our proportion, not proportionally represented in terms of EDC clients and grants and loans. And now we are completely different in terms of being overrepresented in terms of our population of businesses. So we really are, getting much better. Jamie has really led the charge a lot in terms of getting much better services proportionally. And that's been a huge turnaround in terms of the services from the Economic Development Collaborative and other kinds of services. So I just wanted to say those things because I think when you move beyond patios and parking lots, you get into issues in terms of impact on the overall character of the community, and we just have to be very careful with that.
Okay, James.
If I may respond, Mr. Mayor, that was kind of directed at me.
Okay.
I want to clarify.
2 minutes. No, we're not going to.
If you don't ask the question if they can use Ojai Avenue, they'll never tell you they want to, right? So it might not be something that's on the table, but at least it's an option. If you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get the right answer. And I am not at all knocking the impact and the engagement that Jamie and James have had in the community, or you and Randy or whoever else it's been. What I'm saying is that we could do better. This community has not had a great relationship with the city council and businesses. And I do think there's some options out there because in my communications with these businesses, they were much more open to some of these ideas, which I don't think have actually been asked to them. I don't think approach to some of these about, I can tell you that George had no idea about Ojai Avenue even being on the radar of anywhere. He had immediate issues with what the city came out and did not approve what he was doing in his parking lot initially. And I had to communicate with James and to the city about how that was working. It wasn't handled super smoothly, not because there was any lack of engagement, just because there's some growing pains and a whole new issue. And I think it was all reasonable, but I think there's some creativity out there that's being missed. I just don't see us gathering every opportunity there can be because the feedback I've heard is, frankly, people are scared to ask these questions. And I don't know, Bill. I mean, I think there's fear from some of these businesses on how the council will approach them for trying to be flexible with some of the rules. And I think, I just want to make sure we're capturing all that because we artificially make it really hard to do business in Ojai. And we have to have opportunities like this where we try and make it a little bit easier.
Okay. All right. Okay. Both sides have had to say. Thank you.
So, Mayor, one final comment, please. Just one final. If you don't
use anybody's name, though, Randy.
No, I'm not. If you don't ask, you don't receive. It's just an old.
We don't want to have to give 2 minutes.
Don't ask, you don't receive. So it can't always be on us. It's got to be on the people that need. And if they need something, they need to have the ability to come to us, and not in fear, but in the fact that right now, as a council and as a community, we're looking out for all, not just businesses, but we're looking out for the community as a whole. So if you have a question or if you have a need, you need to come forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Now back to the city manager. We're on the emergency response and the status of the pandemic and other emergencies.
Yeah, thank you. And I will let Jamie get home at this point if nobody else has any questions for him.
No, don't open it up again, James.
Okay, there we go. Get out of here. Good. All right, so I will keep it very brief. That was, the bulk of the issue now. There's two aspects. One is the economic recovery, which is critical, and we're trying to get creative and come up with some ideas and programs. The other is the impact of the coronavirus. It continues. We wrote this report a week ago, 6 days ago, and there were 1,190 cases in the county. We are now up to 1,381, and I think there probably was an update while we were sitting here. Thankfully, no increase in deaths from the 35 listed, but 12 currently in the intensive care unit, 301 cases under home quarantine, and a positive is 4,000 more people tested in 9 days, an increase from 29,000 to 33,000. So I know it's not not getting the headlines in the press that it's been getting, but I think it's just important for people to realize that the numbers are still going up, and to keep exercising caution. I think a big part for us in Ojai, as Jamie said, is that we're trying to reopen safely, and we're emphasis on the word safely. We still have the face covering requirement, which we're the only city in Ventura County that has that. But we are seeing that as the state releases more guidelines for more businesses to reopen, they are either recommending or requiring face coverings in almost all of those businesses. So I think that is going to be part of the recovery as we move on. And so the last thing I will say is that on the 5th of June, the big news between last meeting and this meeting is on the 5th of June, the state released guidelines for schools, day camps, bars, gyms, campgrounds, and some other businesses, including hotels, casinos, museums, zoos, and aquariums, to reopen with modifications in place. And the way it works is the state is saying that effective June 12th, those things could reopen. But because the state's such a large area with different circumstances, they give the county the option to opt in if they meet certain criteria. And so the state has allowed those things. Now the next step is the county needs to opt into those. We believe that will happen pretty quickly here. So realistically, we're expecting that those things will be able to start opening up here in the next, week or so, give or take, with the and how long the county takes to review and determine the modifications to those orders. So that's the big news from the last meeting to this one. I'll quickly address the second item. Obviously, one of the things that's happened recently is there's been the protests regarding use of force policies and police services. We talked a little bit about this earlier with the budget, that the city, we've received over 60 comments today with people asking us to reconsider, the amount of funding that we budget for police services. Ojai is a unique city. It seems like I'm saying that every meeting, but we're a small city. We contract with Ventura County Sheriff's Department for sheriff's services, And as people pointed out, we have a large percentage of our budget go to police services, but we're also, when I say we're unique, what I mean is that we contract for the minimum level of services because we are so small, which has always been our challenge, and kind of the argument of why the cost is high for a small city is that we're so small that we have to get the minimum amount, and that's our challenge. So on our agenda today, we have we had recommended that council direct staff to engage in a dialogue with the sheriff's department regarding use of force policies and report back to city council. And so we are now kind of expanding to dealing with multiple emergency type situations.
Susan?
James, rather you're recommending that you go by yourself, but it feels appropriate to take along, in my opinion, a council member. And I was wondering how you felt about that, and if you felt okay about it. I wanted to know if Council Member Wyrick would be willing to go with you.
No, I'd like to go with him.
You'd like to go?
The mayor, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great to have the mayor go.
Yes, I agree.
And I would like to say, as we engage in the conversation, that we have had really good experience in our town for at least the last, half dozen years, maybe longer than that. Maybe we have just not had that, but we don't know what the policies or what the latest is and what, how it is throughout the county. I think that Ventura County is much more in tune with the community-based policing ideas back when Gary Pettis was the chief here, and James Fryhoff did a terrific job. I was there at the police station in down Libby Park on Saturday, and our new chief, is he in the audience or is he at home? I haven't seen him. Jose is. But I want to thank him. Okay, Jose, chief. Yeah, it was great to see the smiling faces and him engaged with particularly the young people to let them know that our police services are public safety, community-based, and that we're on the side of the citizen. But we should periodically have that kind of a discussion with our sheriff and review. And I think some of the research that Bill has done in the past regarding the per capita cost of police services, having nothing to do with funding and defunding and stuff that's in the national news, I think that we do have to have conversations with the county to see, what can be done under these extraordinary circumstances. We've always done as a city our share since we started contracting. We used to have our own department. We can't really spend less money and have our own department. And as long as we're getting good service, why would we want to do that? But I think having that conversation in the context of the difficulty in funding all of our services, what's important is not only community-based policing, but to have a balance in all public safety services offered both by the county and the city. And I think that's what's got most of the people in the country concerned. And so I'd be very, very pleased to have that conversation.
Mayor?
Yes, Bill.
And just to reiterate, just to amplify, I think Mayor would be great. Mayor Johnson would be great doing that with the city manager. Yeah. And I just want to repeat again that I really believe that part of that conversation is how having these contracts updated and not insisting that they all be standardized by community could really be a tool to advancing a close relationship between the sheriff's department, implementing community policing, and doing a lot better. I mean, we're doing well already. I would take issue. I think what I call the cannabis raids were a bit of a exception to the usual good relationship. But other than that, right. I think that it's been good, and I think that we can put a stronger foundation on that good relationship with individualized contracts and try to get the sheriff's department away from having to be one size fits all with every contract city. I just really believe that.
No, I think that's a good suggestion, and I think they should be open to it. And if not, I'll be happy to report back to us and see what our options are. Okay, James, did you have more on that?
I have a comment. Mayor.
Yeah, Susan.
I would request, if you haven't done so already, that you review the police scorecard. I sent a link to that.
Yeah, I'd look at it.
To find out if it's accurate or not, the facts that are in that.
No, that was very interesting. Did everybody get that report card? Was it put out by something zero? What? Is that the one you're speaking of?
California. Let me see. I have it right here.
Well, that's okay.
I just sent it to everyone. Yeah, I sent it to.
Yeah, the report card basically put us in with what over half of the counties in California that were rated by this organization as Fs for certain reasons. But in the northern part of the state of California, in the very sparsely populated areas, they had a much higher rating. And I would submit that, to borrow a phrase that Bill uses frequently about getting more granular, if they got more granular with Ventura County, I submit that Ojai is more like Amador County or one of the places in the north. And I think our experience may be different than the rest of the county, and in many ways very positively. But that doesn't mean we're doing it perfectly and we can't improve and get it, as Bill says, have a more tailored contract. I think that time maybe, as the Reverend Al Sharpton would say, the time is now. So we should talk.
Yeah, it says that this is the first statewide police scorecard in the United States. It was built using data from California's Open Justice Database, public record requests, national databases, and media reports. So, the purpose is to make needed changes. So possibly
it is a first rough cut to give you an idea that we could do better. Everybody could do a little better, even those that are doing well, and a lot of them aren't doing well. So. Yeah. Okay, I did have one other thing, James, on this. Let's see, you had the emergency to continue to take action needed. We need to take your resolution, but before we get to that, we're now getting into yet another dilemma. We have a pandemic, first in 100 and some years. Then we had the unrest and the policing issue. And now if you were outside at all today, the hot weather is with us. That should be a reminder to all of us about the fire dangers in this valley. And it's supposed to be even hotter and drier tomorrow. I have a call from Edison, who wants to do the right thing, but they have scheduling problems. And our city manager and our public works director are doing an excellent job standing guard for us. That during the pandemic, where people were all locked in their houses, or at least supposed to be self-isolating, we didn't want them suddenly to be without power, without TV, without all of those kinds of conveniences. But we are now in our third month of this, and we're starting to reopen. And so Edison is asking, and the reason I'm bringing this up tonight is that I think we as a council have said to our staff that we want them to be extra sensitive to people who are losing when they have power outages for whatever reason. And so I think James and Greg are under some pressure to be pretty strict on that. And then that puts them in an awkward position with the Edison company, who are trying to, maybe for administrative convenience and scheduling, but maybe for good public safety reasons, have some repairs they need to do during the daytime. Have any of you had any contact with the utility companies on that? About the notices of power outages during the day?
Not in a while. They used to be. They were coming fast and furious there for a while, but not in a long time.
Okay,
no, they're still doing them.
Starting to come again, and
they're still doing them.
Greg has been doing a good job of keeping the conversation going and trying to enforce, the desire of us to protect our families and the kids at home and all that. So the reason I want to bring it up is that not one of us could be a spokesperson to the utility company, even though I will return their call tomorrow. But I want to give some guidance to our staff as, are we hard over? Absolutely under no circumstance do we have power outages during the day and make everything to be done at night? Or are we really saying that where it's possible to do it at night, we should do it at night? as the least disruptive. And then where they're asking to do it during the day, they need to give enough information to our staff to show why when they weigh public fire risk and the public service versus the inconvenience of the power outage, so that the staff might be able to make some exceptions without being at odds with us.
Yeah, I'm good with that approach personally.
James, is that of any, I don't know how much help you need.
Yeah, it's useful. I think, we've had good success. I think we had, there's been quite a few. I think we've had 15, if I remember right, 15 requests, and we've been able to get 12 of those done at night, when turning off power won't prevent someone's, children from doing homework, or, won't impact the air conditioning or things like that. So we've had good success, but we are running into now, especially with the heat, Edison saying that these have to be made and there's potential fire risk if they aren't made. So I think that feedback helps, because we've taken a really hard line approach of just saying, we're not going to allow it during the day during the pandemic. And we're probably at the point where we need to start thinking about some exceptions.
Well, or at least some balance to it. If you and Greg are available at 4:30 tomorrow afternoon, we could all, the three of us could go on a conference call with them and see if we can impress upon them that we're not just trying to be hard-nosed here in the city. And we still have fire safety as a very high priority with the community. But, we don't want to just be interrupting power during the day for the convenience of the subcontractor, if in fact that might be part of the problem. So.
Cool.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve the resolution.
I have one more comment. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I meant to do this under item 1, but you went right to 2, so I didn't get a chance. Parents are still asking about the playground, and they wanted to know why we couldn't have, a washing station for the kids at the playground, and it's out in the fresh air, and why we couldn't maybe limit the number of kids. But that's because it's a state mandate. Am I correct? That the city cannot, on their own, open the playground because of the state and county mandate?
Yes, and in fact, when the county, at the most recent meeting, they announced those new things that are going to open, and we specifically asked if playgrounds could open, and the answer was that those are not allowed at this time.
Okay, thank you. The public wants to know. Okay.
No. Okay, do we need a motion on number 3, James? The third recommendation of item 5?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Agreed. The resolution was previously adopted, and the city manager can continue under that current authority.
Do what?
The resolution was previously adopted, and the city manager can continue under that current authority.
Okay, thank you, man. Okay, let's go to item 6, the ATP. Okay, we did continue that matter to next Tuesday. Okay.
Next Tuesday, 6 o'clock. Let's tell the public that it's at 6 o'clock next Tuesday.
Right, 6 o'clock next Tuesday. To those of you, if you're just tuning in, that this matter has been continued to that time certain to talk specifically about this issue exclusively. Okay. We go to item number 7. Okay, right? Yeah. Annual review of commission and committees. James.
The very, very brief staff report to this is that May 2020 was the expiration for several commissioners' terms. We had previously talked about some commissions, and we had and City Council had declared a couple positions interim. But with the expiration of several terms, almost across every commission, we wanted to bring an item as soon as possible to allow council discussion of whether to make any changes or provide direction on modifications to the commissions. So the brief summary, which is included in the staff report, is that, for example, Planning Commission is a 5-member commission. 3 members' terms have now expired effective May 2020, and they can continue to serve if council desires, or we can look at that. Parks and Rec Commission is a 7-member commission with 2 positions vacant and 4-member terms expired in May. And then it just kind of goes through the list. I won't read them all, but there's just there's several vacant positions. So with that, I can answer any questions, but it's essentially the review by City Council of those commissions.
Okay, other questions?
I have a question. There are at least 4 applicants for the Planning Commission. And so do you, and the 3, do the 3 ones that are up want to reapply? Do we know that?
So we have not reached out to any of the planning commissioners about reapplying, particularly because some of the commissioners had been declared interim. So we wanted to talk to council first before we offered that.
I could speak to that.
Yeah, Bill.
Because I was liaison to the planning commission meeting I attended via Zoom, and this issue came up, and I told them that any of Susan, I told them very specifically, anybody that wanted to apply for a new term to be considered to be reappointed, that they needed to get their application in, and that was at the meeting. And I told them to immediately contact the deputy city clerk and to apply, and made it clear to them that that's what they needed to do if they wish to be considered for a new appointment.
Okay,
so
Bill, was everybody
made it very clear?
Bill, was everybody in attendance?
Everyone was in attendance.
Okay, so everybody's been notified.
So did we
answer to Susan's question, James, have we had any interest expressed by the commissioners to continue?
We had not as of Thursday of last week. I'm not sure if we got any in the last couple of days. If the deputy city clerk's on the meeting. Okay, I just got a note that Commissioner Quillisi has. He's the only one.
Okay, so we can give another week or 2, and then we need to go ahead and conduct interviews. I guess we're going to have to do it sort of this way under Zoom. Randy, you have your hand up.
So just, reading the discussion item, it also talks about reviewing or modifying some of the city's existing commissioners and committees. Would this be the appropriate time to actually look at the size of these commissions, and because of the vacancies, just drop them all back down to 5? Is that the discussion, James?
Yeah, that's something we can discuss under this.
I think it's time to think about Parks and Recreation and the Historic Preservation Commission being going to 5. I think there's a case to be made for the Arts Commission to stay at 7. But I think in particular, I would certainly like to suggest directing staff to direct the changes needed in the code to take Park and Rec and HPC to 5.
Okay, and now would be a good time, or as good as any. In fact, in some cases, because we do have vacancies. I think in the case of Parks and Rec, even the chair was encouraging us to proceed in that direction.
So I'll go ahead and just for discussion, moving things along, make a motion to see if there's a second that we just in general ask staff to look at drafting what would be involved in changing the code to bring those to 5.
Okay. What?
I would second that.
In the parks? Bill?
Yes.
Was that the Historic Commission in the parks?
Historic and Historic Preservation and Park and Rec.
Second to that?
Huh?
Is there a second to that motion?
Yeah, I seconded, Mayor.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. During discussion.
Mr. Mayor, one question for clarification.
Yeah.
Is the motion to apply the same structure where the appointments are at large, or would the motion be to apply the district-based structure that the Planning Commission now has?
Former, not latter.
Okay, thank you.
My motion would be former, not latter. We're too small a city to move away from. We need to stay at large.
Right, but the way we did it with planning wasn't necessarily by district, but by,
right.
but each member of the council would have could nominate somebody rather than having it done, as the mayor's task. Remember,
right.
we did that with planning.
That's correct.
Problem with that? Mm-hmm. It would seem to me that when we elect our council, it's for at least a council person to have some influence over. Well, okay, you've heard the speech before.
But anyway, I think the same. Yeah, at large, that would be my motion.
But just to clarify, I think the mayor was making the point. Appointed by each council member, so it would be 5 appointments subject to council confirmation. rather than mayor appointment subject to council confirmation.
Did the last part, Matt?
It would be 5 appointments. Each council member gets 1 appointment subject to confirmation by the full council, which would be the matching the planning commission structure. And I misspoke. It's not from districts. The commissioners can serve from the whole city, but each seat gets an appointment. Is that the recommendation?
But not by district, right?
Not by district. Okay, is that right? You're clear on that, Bill?
I'm not clear.
It means that you could live anywhere under the to be a candidate to be appointed, but you would have an appointment, Bill would have an appointment, I would have an appointment. Everybody when the
That's not my question.
Okay, what is
I thought it was 3 had to be in the city limit and 2 could be outside of the city limit.
Okay, well that we haven't addressed. I would favor in the city limits.
But Kathy Nolan lives 1 house outside. As we all know, we have artificial borders that are way outdated, and I don't want to lose a commissioner that wants to continue to serve. Okay. So my question is, I thought it was structured. I see Matt raising his hand.
Yeah. So the motion on the table right now was, as I understood it, just about Parks and Rec and historic preservation, which do not have that same residency requirement as I recall, although I'm confirming it right now.
Right.
Okay. So they can be anywhere in the Ojai Valley.
Actually, I take that back. For HPC, the current requirement is 4 of the 7 have to at least live in the city, and there's up to 3 non-residents. So were we to apply that portionally, it would be no more than 2 non-residents.
Right.
Okay. Okay. And my other question is, somebody said that they spoke to Park and Rec and they want the chair wants to do I want to know if they want the 5 members. Did somebody say they do?
So I'll speak to that. I talked to the commission about the fact that they are currently down to 5 members and they have 2 vacancies. And so I don't want to put words in the chair's mouth, but when we discussed, we talked about the potential of a 5-member commission, and they did not have any concerns.
Okay.
The chair did not.
Okay.
Right.
That's Park and Rec?
That's Parks and Rec, yeah.
Okay.
I have not spoken to the HPC chair yet about it.
Okay.
Okay, so the direction to staff is what, Bill?
I know Ryan has his hand up, but just to answer your question before Ryan is recognized, the direction is for staff to come up with the language for us to consider formally in the changes in the text amendment to the code. No, that would be the direction for staff to spend time coming up with proposed language for us to consider.
Okay, and then you say Ryan. I don't see Ryan's picture right now, but
yeah, I have a question.
Oh, there you are.
How do we know? Are people? I mean, am I assigned someone who I don't know who when they quit, I get to appoint someone?
That would be fun.
There's no list. I mean, here we are talking all this. There's no list of who was appointed by who, how this would change, what the limitations in each committee are from inside the city and outside, whether that would have to be replaced with an inside or outside person of the city. I don't know who is my person, and if we're just waiting, is it go in order, or is it just whoever was appointed? And it looks like Matt might have an answer.
So a couple of comments on that one. Right now, for everyone except the Planning Commission, there are no appointments by individual council members.
Right.
For the planning commissioners, all current 5 members, with noted that some are interim status, were previously appointed by the full council. They're the transition commission, if you will. The next appointment will be filled by the mayor, the next by District 4, the next by Districts 1 and 2, and then District 3, and then rotating from there. So what I would draft would be the same structure. The first appointment by the mayor, the second by District 1, 2, 3, 4, and rotating for the openings on HPC and PC, or HPC and PRC.
Now, those districts change.
And you can change it, of course.
After the election in November, those districts will change again.
Yeah, they'll be redistricted in mid-2021, sometime after April 1st when we get the official census numbers, unless that's delayed by the pandemic.
The problem is that hypothetically, one of us could be in District 1 today, and after the election in November, we could be in District 2 after the election. So you have to.
Yes, that's possible.
You mean
We're not making appointments by district.
I'll tell you what. Why don't we have staff work
No,
that
that's
out
the
the language, and then when they bring it back, we can have.
Actually, we're not picking the person from the district, but we are making decisions by district because that's the order you go through. And we have districts that are in constant flux because they have to be reworked after every election. So
No, not after every election. Every 10 years, after every census.
But we have to do. Oh, okay. That's why this one is Matt. I thought it was
Because it's 2020, the census. The districting requirement is every census.
For a decade.
Yeah, so once they're set for a decade.
Okay.
But we're just happen to be because of we districted starting the 2020 election just before the census.
I just know we have to after this year's election. I thought
that's correct. But the reason for that is because of the timing with respect to the census.
Okay. Well, that's not as big a deal. I was worried about that.
Okay, so
another question? Sorry. May I?
Sorry about.
Okay. What?
I said, what are you sorry about?
Well, I know you want to move on, but I heard Bill say that there's a case to be made for the Arts Commission staying at 7 members. How do we know without asking if there's not a case to be made for the Historic Preservation Commission? That's my point. I may be in the minority again, but I just wanted to raise that.
I thought I understood Bill to say that he felt there was a case to be made, so he did not include the Arts Commission in his motion.
Yes, I know, but
Okay.
how do we
But
know?
he did include the others, and I don't think, at least I'm not inclined to take a vote from the commission each time as to how we organize. So if you wish to have the Arts Commission considered?
I didn't anticipate that we were going to do this, or I would have asked the Historic Preservation Commission how they felt about it.
We haven't done it yet, Susan. We're proposing that the staff put together the language, and then we'll decide.
Okay, so once they put together the language, we can still tweak the number.
I mean, you can vote against it, or you can approve it or amend it.
Yeah, we're just asking that an instrument for deliberation be composed.
Thank you. I wanted to be real clear on that. Thank you. I'll approve.
Okay. Okay, so if there's no objection to the motion, James, you and Matt, marching orders.
Yes, I think I saw Councilmember Haney's hand up. I don't know if you're able to see everybody, but
he's not on my screen. Randy, are you out there?
Thank you. So, and I'm glad someone could see that. I'm not. These meetings are difficult at best when you're not in control of all the.
Yeah. You only get that 5 at a time.
Okay. I'd Bill, just to make it easier on staff, I would not be. I'd like to ask you to amend your motion to just include all commissions, to bring them all in at 5, just to make it easier. And then when it comes back, we can let each commission have their debate with us as to why and what their needs are. I don't think I agree with Susan. I don't know if it's fair to say one and not the other ones. If we're going to say 5, let's do 5 across the board.
Well, I'm not. I don't want to accept that because I like I said, I think there's some very specific characteristics of the Arts Commission in the way that they divide up into a lot of work by subcommittee that none of the other commissions operate according to as effectively. So they also don't have any trouble recruiting people.
Yeah.
In the Arts Commission. So I'd rather leave it just these 2 for now.
I agree. Okay. So staff, please proceed, and I guess maybe in July or August, whenever we'll bring it back. Is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Mayor,
Yes.
can we acknowledge and congratulate Robin Gerber on joining the Arts Commission? I think that's great.
Oh, yeah.
Good nomination, Mayor. Good nomination.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay, let's go to Community Forest Management Plan. And Bill, you're the Smokey the Bear on this, right?
Okay. Well, I circulated my analysis that I spent some time on. I circulated. Thank you for recognizing me, Mayor. I've been the person talking about this. I feel that the initial, the '09 plan specifically requested an overall analysis or overall review every 5 years. And plus there's internal contradictions. It's not clear exactly, for example, what the terms or method of appointment are to the tree committee. And so I wrote up, my critique there and circulated to staff in mid-May. And I just think that we should have, I made a suggestion, I think, I forgot, I emailed it to everybody. Let me try to bring it up. The direction that we should take, and it revolves around moving away from just a numbers game to looking at the overall sustainable ecosystem and ecology of our community and the community forest's role in that. And then also have some particular stipulations about membership in the tree committee, how they're appointed, what the terms are. And so my motion, I'm sorry I didn't bring it up. I should have been anticipating this, but I made a recommendation for direction for staff to take in terms of revising the community forest plan in that email. And then I attached my point by point analysis. But I'm trying to just give an overall view that I think we need to look at how we've evolved in terms of how we look at our community and sustainability and the overall ecosystem and the critical role of the urban forest in that, but from an ecological perspective and not just a numbers game, and also clean up some ambiguities about how the tree committee is appointed, constituted, and what their terms are. So that's my, short suggestion.
Okay, so kind of two parts to it. One is the way in which we approach what you call the ecological balance or whatever, and the other is the charter as to who's advising the council on how they're selected as opposed to.
Right.
Okay, so you want to make a motion on the first part tonight, or do you want to give direction to what should we go from here?
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we give staff the direction to come up with recommendations for revisions incorporating those two principles.
Okay, now the first part seems like staff work. Second part seems like kind of like policy work. James, are you comfortable that you'd understand what we're asking you to do?
Yeah, and we could bring a recommendation for I think you're referring to the committee appointments as being potential policy, but we can bring a couple options or something and come back for council to determine which to proceed with.
Okay, well, you can work with Bill and whoever on the council is engaged in this.
And I know I really want to ask Sousa for a lot of help in bringing this ecosystem point of view to this management plan and getting beyond the numbers game. You know what I'm saying, Sousa?
Yes, and this is critical for it's part of climate change.
Right.
It's more important than ever that we get this right. I'm fully in support of most of what you said. I think it's very timely and important. I like the idea of each council member possibly picking a person that's qualified. We spell out the qualifications,
right?
The criteria, and then we get to choose someone.
Yeah. So anyway, I'd be happy to work with staff and Sousa on that, Mayor.
Yes, I'd love to work on that.
Okay, if there's no objection, that works fine. We'll appoint an ad hoc committee of Bill and Sousa, and you'll work with James or Joseph and get it done. Okay.
So, Mayor,
yeah.
while we're addressing this this advisory committee, maybe we need to address all the advisory committees and come up with a policy for it at the same time.
Well, maybe we should.
Just a thought.
I think we should address all of them, but not necessarily all at the same time. We just got to start.
But I'm just saying the policy, when we think the policy through, obviously they're all going to be unique to their issues, but how they're formed and how they're governed and how they're utilized, there should be some uniformity to it.
Yeah, okay. I think we're getting all right. Okay, so now you've got what's number 9?
Number 9.
That Ryan and
yeah, Ryan, you want to?
Ryan and Bill.
We brought this up right in our last meeting when we were actually at City Hall. Would have been right before we were. Our last meeting before Earth Day. We had had a very quick opportunity to have a meeting with some experts that were in Ojai a couple months ago regarding their ability and their willingness to want to look at Ojai as a potential canvas to do some really interesting environmental things. And we got 1 day's notice from Jamie Fleming. He said, hey, he called Bill and I, said, can you guys come down here tomorrow, like in the morning, under short notice? We ran down there, met with these guys. We had kind of a penciled out plan that we had mentioned to everybody. Rug got pulled out from underneath us with COVID. So we really couldn't do anything with it. Since then, Jamie Fleming has still been in contact with these individuals, and they still want to talk to us, with the difference being now that we've kind of made it clear that there's pretty much little or no money on the table from the city to be able to do it. But they've said, hey, we'd still like to explore maybe raising money privately, a little different timeline, and there might be some options there. So we don't have a lot of specifics yet. It's still in a fact-finding stage, I would call it. But because we hadn't officially kind of created any ad hoc committee, and over the last couple weeks, Jamie Fleming has reached out and said, hey, we want to have this conversation again. Thought it might be a good idea to just create the ad hoc committee so that you guys are at least aware, and then come back with information, because we're still pretty premature on it, other than the one area where we did take them to on that short notice was the area behind City Hall. And even though there was a garden committee, we didn't have time, Randy. We were all very respectful of the fact that we know you and I are on the garden committee, but this was a 1 day, this was literally like a 12-hour turnaround thing from when we found out. So because Bill and I talked with these guys before, Jamie asked us if we talk with them again, get some more information, and bring it back to the whole council. So that's what the intent of this is.
Mm-hmm. Bill?
Yeah, and I think it's very timely, because the work that Ryan and Randy are doing, I think, complements perfectly. We've got this grant in Stewart Creek, and we have an opportunity. People are very excited about it, and we can get a lot of in-kind leveraging, I think, at no cost to the taxpayers, of what is being done with that grant. So we'll get much more than the $800,000 or so of impact. We have people very interested in looking at how to go beyond just the invasive species issue to succession planting and managing of the overall ecosystem down there. And I got to tell you, last time I walked down there, it's inspiring. I mean, there's watercress down there now, and tadpoles. I mean, it's just it's really delightful. And I think it's just the different pairs of us are, I think, going to be able to leverage this grant into something quite interesting.
Yeah, I will say I've been back there about a half a dozen times since we went on the tour. I can't stop going back there. I keep thinking about it. I keep looking.
Worried about you, Ryan.
I know. I mean, there is such an amazing, and I'll be honest, I feel that we have let, in some way, that we aren't going to let happen anymore, the Smith-Hobson family down a little bit for what we've done as a city with that property back there, because I didn't know as a citizen how amazing it was. There's a bluff on the back. We've talked about a lot of stuff. Randy and I have talked about a lot of this. So what we'd like, all Bill and I want to do is have the next conversation, see where these guys are, in this kind of mid or semi-post-COVID, near end, hopefully, kind of issue timeline, bring it back to the council, and then, as is appropriate, it may be that Bill and I make a suggestion to the ad hoc committee for the actual garden area, right, that's Randy and I, and kind of carry it off from there.
And I understand this party that reached out to us is a global enterprise, a global activist environmental group. So with a lot of connections with a lot of influential and very influential people in the environmental movement globally. So it's a real opportunity.
Yeah, we had that day. The reason it was such a hot point was these individuals were in town, their group with a bunch of students, as well as a very well-respected expert in what are called climate parks. Bill and I both know if we start telling you guys a lot now, everybody's going to have as many questions as we do, and we don't have the answers yet. Okay. But it's definitely something we think is worth spending our time to explore a little bit more.
Okay, they were impressed with us. We were impressed with them.
Okay, what kind of a time frame are you guys thinking of as far as coming back? In the fall, in September? Oh.
No, I think it would be sooner than that. They've been pretty anxious. I think what we need to do is reset where we are with Jamie, and then probably figure out after a conversation what the timeline might look like, whether there's a substantive decision about pushing them forward or allowing them to raise money. I don't know yet. We really don't know. I mean, the conversation we had very informally was night and day difference from where it's going to be now, because we don't have much money to offer. So it's really going to be about potentially them raising money. We're not sure. We got to find out. All we know is that they've said, hey, even if there's no money on the table from the city of Ojai, we need a great canvas to do what we're really good at. And it seems to dovetail really well with this grant. And we'd like to explore it further. So can we talk to Ryan and Bill again with something that's not going to involve city expenditure?
Okay, so why don't you and Bill, go forth and multiply, come back, talk with James and put it on the agenda, and we can talk when you have more information.
Sounds good. That's what I agree with.
Okay, cool. I don't see hands. Here's a little noise out there. Okay. I guess we're now down to the council report. We are. Okay, why don't we start? Ryan, you have anything?
Sure. I had an APCD meeting today. We passed our budget. Not a lot of news there other than everybody's hurting for money and reserves are getting eaten up. We did have, James, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Since now in our last meeting, we had that meeting with Lockie. That was after our last meeting, right?
I actually thought that was right before the last meeting, but maybe
I can't remember. I thought it was after, but we did start the process of talking to APCD about an inventory of greenhouse gas in the valley. And what was nice is Lockie was a little reluctant about committing too much staff time. He was really relying on his staff. It at first didn't sound like it would be super easy, but I do think that being vice chair may have helped a little bit because his staff very quickly reminded that I might be the chair next year. And they were he was a little more willing to put a little more elbow grease. So the really good news was that they thought there was going to be a fairly simple, solid way to get it done without a lot of costs. And we're continuing to push that forward. And it's included in some of the feedback we've gotten from the climate committee as well as one of their key items to get that inventory done. So that ball is rolling. Staff and myself will follow up as we need to with APCD. That's pretty much it.
Randy, do you have anything?
You know, we passed the VCTC budget. I believe it was $78 million this year, and 16 million of that actually came from the CARES package. So that tells you how bad the finances are affecting all these companies. Gold Coast, or these agencies, Gold Coast passed theirs. I think it was 32 million. The same thing. They had 9 million of that 32 is from the CARES package. So all these agencies within the community that are providing services to a lot of people have been impacted. Ridership's down 80% on Gold Coast as well as VCTC. So everyone is hurting and everyone's doing the best they can to manage their resources. So I think we need to be grateful for the fact that the CARES package came in and that these agencies were able to tap into it to help sustain the levels of availability to riders in our community. That's the biggest thing I could contribute tonight.
Okay, thank you. Susan, do you have anything?
Yes, I'd like the public to know that we got our first climate emergency committee meeting report. It's an excellent in-depth report, and we got it late today, so I haven't read it all. But I was wondering, James, if after we review it, will this be posted on the city website? Can we make? a page? I mean, I haven't.
Yeah, I think we created a climate committee page so we could post it there. And then the other thing was I spoke with the committee, and they had asked about being able to present it at an upcoming council meeting for discussion. So we can coordinate that too.
Yeah, so that will be on a future agenda?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And then the other thing I wanted to say, I have been resumed my role as liaison to the Ojai Valley Green Coalition. And one of the things that we did discuss the possibility of Earth Day 2021, but things so uncertain, it's unknown, whether we can have a public event, a real event in Newby Park again or virtual. So that is, I just want to mention that, at some point that I'll be bringing that back for discussion, probably way down, a few months down the road after our summer break. But the other thing, once we know that we're going to have Ojai Day, I just want to, I want somehow to connect Ojai Day with making it a more earth-friendly Ojai, a really more local event. So at some point, does that need to be on the agenda, or will there be an Ojai Day coordinator? I know that seems down the road, but it's not that far away. It's out in October, correct? Ojai Day?
Yes, it's October. So it's, we'd need to start planning soon if we're going to do it. So I've asked the staff that we have that's going to be working on it to put a proposed plan together, and we can bring that back to council to discuss if we want to move forward.
Okay, good. All right, and then for anyone tuning in late, we're going to have a special meeting next Tuesday to discuss the changes on Maricopa Highway and the whole active transportation proposal for all of it's going to be everything, right? The whole ATP proposal.
Yes.
Starting at 6 o'clock next Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Different time, same station. Okay. Bill, you're up.
Yeah. I just want to point out that I'm opened my mouth one too many times with the Ventura Regional Sanitation District about things. So I just got named to the chair of the Facilities Committee, dealing with things like fire management and landfill gas and the et cetera, et cetera. So like everyone else here on our council, we all have our opinions on these groups when we're serving on them, and we find ourselves disproportionate to our small community, but with the support of our small community, getting involved. So yes, I'm now chair of the Facilities Committee for the VRSD.
Congratulations. Okay. James, you have a report?
Just a couple quick things. One is we talked a little bit about the fire season, which we all know is year-round now, but just wanted to report that we did end up sending 197 weed abatement letters out to property owners. We're getting good response, but we are seeing that there are some that we're going to be sending out a notice of violation on. The first notice will just ask that the person, correct the issue. We're expecting to send about 20 of those out by next week. So just a reminder for everyone, we already saw fires in, Santa Cruz Island, or, out at the Channel Islands. We saw fires in San Jose, and it seems like, I think this morning there was another one. So it's that time of year, which is now all year, but that is in progress. Quickly, I'll announce, I meant to send this out and didn't get a chance to, but the Arts Commission emailed me and asked to let council and the public know that they have announced the opening of the City of Ojai's virtual public art tours. During the pandemic, you can let your fingers do the walking on a virtual tour of Ojai's public art from the comfort of your own home. There's 4 city tours: the downtown tour, along the way tour, the West City tour, and the East City tour. They provide fascinating and little known backstories, such as you can learn what happened to early bird shopper when she disappeared from the Arcade Plaza perch. Read the fascinating story of how a truckload of redwood survived the Thomas Fire and found its way home. discover the broken tile chair covered with character beads, salt and pepper shakers, and china, and so much more. So visit artsojai.org for the virtual tour. We also just launched the virtual recreation program, so we're going virtual with a lot of services, and that's on the Ojai rec page. And then just lastly is June 24th is the public hearing for the Casitas water rate that we talked about at the last council meeting. We did send our letter requesting that Casitas consider putting a sunset clause and creating a restricted fund for the adjudication funding. I received a response from Casitas that they are drafting policy statements that address those topics. So at this point, I guess the question will be if we want to bring an item back on the 23rd to provide a response or further letter to Casitas, or if we're satisfied with their response. And we don't need to answer it now necessarily, but if we want to bring that back, it'll have to be at the next council meeting.
Okay. Well, why don't we put it on the agenda so we can do it? And,
yeah.
And if we don't have anything to add to it, well, that's fine.
Did anybody else read that letter? Because it made absolutely no sense to me what Casitas said.
Well, hopefully they'll get us a draft before the 23rd.
Yeah, it told us what their answer is. It's just I read it real closely. It says there's an account, but it doesn't clarify. It's feels like some classic Casitas kind of shell game. I can't tell that it's definitely says, hey, once you're not going to need this money, we'll give it back to you. But it seems to indicate there will be a segregated account for it. So anyway, I have clarification about what they wrote, and I don't know if it'll get cleared if we don't ask a question between now and then, but I'll leave that up to everybody else. If nobody else has read it, then maybe we bring it back.
I agree with you, Ryan.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I don't know how long this is going to last. I mean, it's, and there was a meeting. I haven't heard anything about the secret no attorney meeting that Casitas had with the Ventura City Council. So by the way, for what it's worth, I've gotten a ton of questions yesterday and today, suddenly out of the blue, all about the water case. People are thinking about it again. So anyway, there's nothing planned. Nobody knows when anything's going to move forward as far as I know. I got notice today that the summons for the city of Ojai was filed. That's about it.
And Fish and Wildlife did their first technical report on the in-stream flow analysis that they're doing.
I don't know if it's worth clarifying that or not, James, or we just bring it back. But it did. I have questions about the letter when we decide we want to discuss it.
Yeah, I had some questions too. I think because there is a time restraint to it or time constraint to it. I'm debating if the city attorney is going to let me ask this, but perhaps we could designate 2 council members that I can talk to, and we can kind of draft what we want to put on the next agenda. So,
that'd be fine.
Yeah, I guess I don't need
Ryan and Ryan.
I don't know. I mean, am I allowed to do it?
Ryan can do it.
I don't really want to get.
It's not directly tied to the lawsuit, but you might want to evaluate your ethical obligations to your clients as you consider that question. Yeah. It may be best to simplify everything. If it's
as much as I'd like to do it, it could cause a conflict in between some issue. And frankly, pushing Casitas. I mean, yes, and I'm colleagues with Casitas on this. I don't want to fight them.
So why don't you talk to Randy and Ryan, and Randy can do it.
Okay. Whatever you guys see fit, but I don't think I should.
Randy, you willing to do it?
I think Bill, I think Ryan should recuse himself for all the above reasons. I have no problem with you and I just talking to James and Matt.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay, that takes us to future agenda items. Is there anything specific you want to add at this meeting, or we can do it next week at the end of our special meeting?
Before you close, I have a question of James about our Zoom meetings. I don't know at what point I can ask, but if no one objects, I have a question of James about the public meeting next week. Mm-hmm. Is there any way we could have more capacity for people to chime in, just like we do with our, like the school board does, and our CAC meetings and all that? Because we can mute the public until it's time for public comment. It just seems, can we consider, what's our capacity to do that?
Yeah, so we have the capacity to add people in. So we could do that. The risk right when all this first started, if you recall, was several agencies got what they called Zoom bombed and had people take over the meeting or put offensive materials up during the meeting. So we have the capacity if we want to open it up. There's some risk involved. So if council desires that we open it up, we can do that. So we're happy to.
Isn't there a way just to mute people?
So we have set up. We upgraded to the premium version, so we have some more ability than we used to have.
Yeah, it feels like next Tuesday is appropriate, for considering that. And then, but I think the public needs to know, because Jamie did speak at the podium, and we don't want 60 people, but perhaps we could have 5 people, 4 could wait outside. We could provide some benches or something spaced apart. I mean,
the challenge with the public meetings is we've been told by the county that we jumped the gun and should not have held a public meeting. We only had one person here last meeting, but we've been told we shouldn't have it. Jamie today spoke as part of the task force, so it wasn't necessarily a member of the public. But
okay.
But so we were trying not to go there yet at the county's request.
Yes, that's good. I just think the public should know, but you'll see what we can do virtually.
Yes.
Or for next Tuesday.
Yeah.
If the council.
I just want to weigh into that. I received 50 emails. And if every person who sent an email is going to come and speak for 3 minutes, okay, I just do the math. I think if they submit and that we have them and they submit them in a timely manner, that we should be able to go through them and they should be put on record, and let's get the discussion done. If we're going to spend an hour and a half listening to public comments, we're never going to get through the actual discussion.
I agree with that. I wouldn't give people 3 minutes, but there are representatives, or it's just something to consider. We don't have to let 50 people on. There's a way to manage it, isn't there, James?
Not very effective.
I think the city attorney will probably tell us that if we open it up, we open it up to.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You can set limits and X minutes per person, a minute. Some agencies do 30 seconds. That might be too small for our small community, but we couldn't say, okay, we're only going to take 50 commenters and we're done. 51 can't comment, but we couldn't set limits on all commenters equally, whether that's email only or it's time limits. There's a couple of options to manage it as the council desires.
Yeah, I'm not what's the word? Commit. I'm just bringing up the discussion. If it's not practical, and
I don't think it is practical at this point. But when we do have public comment frequently, some of the good things that are said are people standing up and reading their letter to us. Which, if they just send the email to us, and then all of us should be reading through them, and then if we each kind of summarize and make whatever arguments that are persuasive to us as individuals as part of the discussion and the ultimate decision, I think that will give everybody their chance without losing control of all this.
Okay, I agree with that. Is there some way we could have the public, alert the public that we would like their comments before 5 o'clock doesn't give enough time.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could, for this special meeting, do some kind of special deadline.
Okay.
People could still send it, but, for us to consider what we want to possibly quote from, good to have it sooner. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we'll put a special note up on that.
Thank you for
James. What is the action that is expected to come out of that meeting next Tuesday?
I think Ryan has his hand up, Mayor.
Okay, wait just a second. I want to hear from James, then I'll go to Ryan.
Yeah, it's just the same. I'm anticipating that we'll use the same report and same subject and recommendation that we had on the agenda for today, which is to review the project and provide direction. Essentially, there's a lot covered in that report. Design costs, grant funding, everything. So right. It's a wide topic, but I think it would be the same thing.
Okay, Ryan.
Why don't we hold a workshop next Tuesday, or call it whatever the hell we want without any public input? And then at the next council meeting, have it as an agenda item, take public input subsequent to that, and then we can vote on an agenda item. That way we don't have any of the rigmarole of next Tuesday. I don't think, right, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong though, right? If we hold it, do we have to have public comment if it's available at a subsequent meeting?
Yeah, we have to have public comment on every item on the agenda.
Well, not an agenda item to make a decision. Like if we agree we're not making a decision,
even if it's just a workshop, if you have workshop ATP, you still have to have comment on workshop ATP.
Okay.
We have to allow comment every meeting.
Okay, thanks.
I don't agree with Ryan. I think we should do the task that we're asked, because if we separate it, there's a week.
We just did separate it from tonight when everybody wanted to talk about it. But hey, it doesn't matter. Susan. Not that I don't want to. It's illegal.
Proceed with the item as it's currently stated. No new stuff, nothing new, just as it's already stated. And they're asking us, for a decision. I thought Ryan was suggesting that we separate the decision to the next meeting.
I agree. It doesn't make any difference, so we're not going to do it. So don't worry about it. Just eliminate what I said from being legal.
Okay. Well, the time has come. Good night, all. The meeting is adjourned.
Hey, all.